Let me know if you can see anything.
Where's that link for the lazy? Did you post it on the Aether Primus?
Yeah, Halloween special live stream.
Not Halloween special.
That's what it says.
Does it actually?
What?
I don't see it though. I see Samus, I see SP announcements, and then I see the showcase of my other M mod, but I don't see... Where is it?
There we go. Remastered preview.
There you go, you're live.
I knew it. Something's gonna fuck up.
Just in case some shit fucks up. Because it always does.
Oh, I think our voice is live too.
Okay. So
that's something that's... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you got okay stream hub.
That's part of why I haven't started streaming it. And I'm like, am I gonna spend like most of the time troubleshooting just to get the fucking thing up?
Dude, I usually don't have any issues streaming. Usually like the first time, but it's not even really up to stream. I could have probably fixed what wrong with my camera.
I love how, I gotta say, I love how for your Super Smash Brothers announcement, you superimpose Samus and Dark Samus to the very front of the roster. Well, I know that's not how that image is.
Exactly.
I took one look at that, I'm like, that's bullshit, that's not how it's lined up.
It's not. Okay, so let's see.
Where's the link?
It's in announcements on the server.
I don't see it. Let me
go to announcements. Right, there's two announcements. The last one is technical difficulties, and the one before that's the link to the stream.
Oh, that's the live stream.
Yep.
Where the hell's troubleshooting? Or is it in our server here?
What are you looking for?
I'm so fucking lost.
The link to the stream?
Yes! I can't find it.
It's in the AP server.
Okay, so I just
under text channels, announcements. Not under my. There's two announcements.
Oh, okay, I see. I'm just
my channel
blind.
And there's one for the server.
I'm just fucking blind. Ignore me.
It's all good. Oh my god! Literally every other game. I don't get this.
Oh, I see that wallpaper you have. I used that as one of my startup splashes.
Which one?
I just have it.
The one in the video.
Very casually opened in Photoshop because for some reason OBS just updated and now it wouldn't update the picture even though I've saved it. It's kind of stupid.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So now OBS wouldn't update the photograph, and I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm just gonna open up Photoshop and just view it in there. Quite the start for you.
Oh my gosh, I'm playing the GameCube version right now. I don't get this.
Feels bad, man.
This sucks. Sucks. I'm gonna try re-downloading the... I can't do the ISO though. What could it be? I feel like it's something... Well, it's not even Prime Hack because I tried just a vanilla version of this week and it didn't work. Let me try something else.
Yeah, I still can't put my finger on what's causing it because you said it was literally working earlier today. So it's not the mod itself. It's not.
Well, in everything, I just tried Zelda, Skyward Sword is working. Prime GameCube version is working. Metroid Other M is working. I haven't tried Echoes, but I'm pretty sure that's gonna work.
Very interesting. Like seriously, I'm trying to think of why the fuck it's not working. I can't. Yes, I see. Yeah.
Okay, we started getting an audience. I think it's about time we start demonstrating. You guys want to wait another couple minutes, or should we start?
I think we should dick around for like another couple of hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couple hours. All right, we're gonna give it like another minute before we start.
Yeah, you give people.
What's up? The GameCube is the best version according to Mr.Mendelli 211.
Oh, you didn't know anything.
Well, I do agree.
He doesn't know anything. Yeah, I mean, we could load the textures into the GameCube version, just not all of the other nifty stuff.
Well, the Prime hack's what makes the game changes everything.
I should try and get the attention of Metroid database on Instagram.
Oh, that's a good idea.
They are pretty active on their Instagram, so I'm like, maybe I should probably tag them in a post that I uploaded a screenshot or a small GIF. Yes, I said GIF of Metroid Prime.
That's how you pronounce it.
Yeah,
you know why?
GIF is peanut butter.
Well, do you know why it's literally GIF? It has to do with the extension itself. The extension .gif literally stands for graphic. You heard it live. Graphic interchange file. Graphic interchange file, not graphic. Damn it. I'm so fucking tired of this argument. I will be honest though, some file extensions are like abbreviations or weird acronyms that don't technically line up with what they are, but GIF is one of them, where it is literally graphic interface file, just like PNG is portable network graphics. So
it's not
portable.
It's not Jurassic Park.
No. Don't say that ever again. I'll leave the fucking stream.
Mr. Miguel 211 says, I don't like the Prime hack in my opinion. It removes the original controls that differentiate the game from other basic FPSs. Well, here's the thing. I can see how that can be like for the most truest of hardcore Metroid Prime 1 fans be a thing.
But you have other ways to play the game.
Yeah, it's not like force. Yeah, it's just an option. I would never be like, you have to play it my way.
Even if it was forced in MPR, you have a game. You could play it the standard way. You could play it on the GameCube or the Wii. There's other ways to play. This is the way we want MPR to be played because it's just a part of the whole experience.
Okay.
It's part of sort of reigniting this game, so to speak. I mean, there's been a lot of effort put into orchestrating getting Prime Hack to work. All of the profiles I made work. The textures, light maps, our custom build of Ishiruka. I mean, I'm trying to think here. The span of like 3 days, I added over 200 lines of code to my launcher just to get all of this to work together. So, and part of that is, again, for the players, them having the ability to choose how they play the game, how they set up the game, things like that. Going into this, I never wanted it to be like, okay, we've made this mod. It only works this one way. Have fun or don't download it. I never really wanted that. That's very anti-consumer, and I'm not.
Mendelli, kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm looking at my task manager, and I have a Turbo Virtual Machine executable that's running in the background.
Okay.
Do you have?
Just a heads up.
I don't.
It's time that we start demonstrating the Metroid Prime Remastered, and looks like we have a decent viewership right now. So, without any further delay, let's jump right into it. Folks, here we have Metroid Prime Remastered. Mendelli, you want to take over? I'm launching the executable right now.
Sure. So what you're looking at now is essentially what you're going to be getting when you download this, excluding some of those text documents. Those are like the settings file, other things like that. That's part of the pre-setup. So when you guys download this, one feature I added is if you want Metroid Prime Remastered to be its own isolated instance of a game, basically its own game on your computer, you can use the import tool to import your data. Now, one thing it does that's really nice, it doesn't just import your save data, if you're a stickler like me and a perfectionist, it also imports your Wii data, or your Me data, excuse me, so that you get your Me thumbnail on your save data as well. It doesn't collide with any of your other Dolphin settings, which is nice because if you already have it set up to where it's working, that's not going to be an issue. In future builds, there are going to be a couple of required settings that are going to be needed for this to work. I do have a way of implementing that where it is not going to damage anything else you already have set up. It's only going to affect Metroid Prime Remastered. But yeah, what you're looking at here on the files, we have the Metroid Prime Remastered launcher. And then we also have the Ishiruka launcher. And the reason the two are there is if you have the auto boot set up, which is where you put your ISO next to the mod, sometimes it can be tricky to change settings mid-game. So I included the Ishiruka entry point just so in case you need to just change your Dolphin settings or whatever, and for whatever reason you're having issues doing it in game, you can just launch this and it will open the emulator directly. It'll still say Metroid Prime Remastered, but it's just our base custom build of Ishiruka that you're getting access to. Everything you're seeing right now is being loaded from the Metroid Prime Remastered executable. In the future, there's going to be a separate file from the Ishiruka entry point and the Metroid Prime Remastered entry point. It's just going to be called Metroid Prime Remastered.mrm, and it's basically just a database file. It just contains all of the textures, all of the code, all of the settings, everything that we're going to need for this to run. This test build you're looking at here isn't actually utilizing built-in textures. All the textures you're going to see are on Ray3D's computer, separate from it. But you know, again, we're including everything together, so it's going to be slightly different when you download it. But the setup process and the way it works is going to be identical and better. That's definitely what we're aiming for with this alpha. As we're going to launch it, we're going to get the community's feedback. We're going to see, you know, what bugs need to be worked out, what needs to be fixed. And I mean, it's already almost perfect, so there's really not much to fix. But based off of the community's feedback, I can iron out my code, get everything working perfectly, and by the time we get our first stable release out, you'll essentially have a native Metroid Prime PC game running. So long as, you know, you follow just a couple of little things, and it's just, you know, it's going to be a very user-friendly experience. So Ray, why don't you go ahead and launch it, and we show them Prime Hack. That's
Perfect.
Something I've been working very closely with Shia with. So yeah, let's give them a look.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mr. Mendelli. Right now, you have the main game launcher over here. Ignore the other titles. If you just have the Prime Trilogy, it's just that I have so many other ISOs loaded up into my directory is why you see so many other different games. But just a heads up, like the moment you launch the Metroid Prime Remastered.exe, there are two very simple instructions to choose between your control schemes of using an Xbox gamepad or a keyboard and mouse by simply pressing two different keys. And the instructions are pretty straightforward. You just have to select yes or no, or press M for mouse and keyboard, or G for a gamepad. Alright, so let's jump into Metroid Prime Trilogy. I'm gonna just go ahead and hit the play button. Hopefully my controls are configured. I'm not sure.
You're using Prime Hack, correct?
I am. I don't know if I have to reset it every time I load it, because since it's the first time I'm loading it.
Yeah, Jason was having right here. You can see this is our custom splash screen, so you're not going to get the kind of like with my other M mod. You're not going to get the Wiimote safety. That again, nobody cares about. But yeah, no, Jason was having some technical difficulties where he had to reload the Prime Hack settings every time. I didn't. Before I sent this out to the team, I wasn't having any issues. So hopefully this just runs smoothly, and Ray3D has no issues, and it just works.
Yep. So
and
far,
even if we
works great. I haven't had any issues with it. I did manage to solve a few frame timing issues by simply enabling the option to store EFB copies to texture. And of course my Mii's aren't showing up, but that shouldn't be an issue. That's just because I recently switched over to another version of Dolphin, which is included in the Prime Hack. So
there is one Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm just gonna load into Chosen Ruins, which is a 63% game completion, just so that I can show you guys the controls with the beam and the visor switching, as I do have a few beams that I already acquired.
There is one small, I wouldn't say it's a bug, I'd say it's like almost like a caching or a loading issue. If you do import your Me data, on the first launch, and again, I still cannot figure out why this happened, your Me data will be there. It won't say it's missing, because if it's missing and you click on a save, it'll say, hey, you're missing your Me data, please choose a new one. It just doesn't show the thumbnail, but when you launch it again, it shows up. So I don't know why that happens, but yeah.
Okay, my cursor is off center. I'm not sure, like it's way down.
Did you turn off lock on and free aim?
I think so, I did. And hold on, I just need to reset my controls in the control screen. I'm just gonna hit Alt Tab. You can do this at any time during the game should the controls mess up. And I'm just gonna go into Configure and select the Metroid Prime Trilogy, no, the Prime Hack Default.
Prime Hack Default, yep.
Mode. It's just because of when I keep switching between two versions, it sort of reverts back to the original, which is why I had to go back and reconfigure my...
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like it reset it for you too.
Yeah. Show them on the Prime Hack settings how they can turn up the sensitivity as well.
Yeah, so if you guys want to turn up the sensitivity, and you can always go hit Alt Tab and go into Prime Hack settings. There's an option for sensitivity right here. If you click on that, you can see currently it's set to 10. I'm going to increase that up to 12 for me, which is a little more ideal. Or let's just go up to 15 for the heck of it for this video.
Yeah, 15's nice. I've been going up to 20 and it's like so smooth still. It's crazy.
That's butter smooth.
There we go. So as you can see, on the screen, the cursor does not move beyond. It's locked to the center as any traditional first-person shooter would. But
it doesn't float freely across the screen.
Freely across your gun, as well as locked pretty much to the center.
So Mr. Miguel, I don't know if he was late to the stream. You will be able to play with either a real Wiimote. I'm still working on implementing those controls. A controller, or mouse and keyboard options. And with the mouse and keyboard options, I have a default profile which utilizes the game's normal functions the way it would normally play, and then essentially the same profile, but with Prime Hack, which is what Ray3D is using here. So it's completely up to you, and that's part of the initial setup. That's part of why I coded this launcher. You can run the game right away and choose what you want. Another nice thing too is I've also set it up so that it doesn't bug you every single time what you want to set up. It saves your settings and you're not bothered again. The settings files do have a small description in them. Literally all you have to do if you want to change it is delete the settings file and then run the game again. Now you can do it manually, but the process is a little clunky, so it's a little quicker and a little easier to just delete your settings text file and then just relaunch a Metroid Prime Remastered. And then once you make your choice there, my mod will essentially do everything automatically for you from that point.
Alright, I'm just going to demonstrate a small little battle against this giant beetle here. I can always press right click to lock onto the target, and I can strafe around just as you normally do with the lock-on controls enabled. And it moves pretty freely and almost seamlessly locks onto the target.
I'm noticing some of the textures seem to be it's got like some sort of desync going on where they're not appearing. Do you know what's causing that? Was it doing that earlier?
Yes, it's because this kind of issue just simply happens the first time when you switch between two versions of Dolphin. The more you run the game, the better it actually gets, and after a point there is absolutely no issues. So it's just the first couple of times when you run the Prime Hack, you're going to notice a little bit of culling. Just simply save your game and then close and then restart. Or you can just use a save state even that would work perfectly fine.
Yeah. For any of our viewers, just so you know, a lot of Dolphin users don't know this. That's just something I've noticed from forums and the subreddit. Save states are not interchangeable between Dolphin versions. So save states that you use with our build will only work with this. You can't sideload save states you have from other versions. Now, I have found ways of forcing save states to work in different versions, but there's honestly, it's a lot to explain, but there's a really good reason why every update of Dolphin does not allow you to use old save states. And it's essentially, it narrows down to preventing things like memory corruption, where you load to your save state and everything's garbled and screwed up and clunky. So, you know, they do it as more of a precaution. It'd be great if they could create some sort of universal save state, but I don't think that's something they can do right now. So that's just sort of a warning for you guys to be aware of.
Awesome. So, Mr. Mendelli, are any of these textures included in my current build? Just curious.
No, so this is part of why I think Samus Prime was going to stream before we had issues. It does not load the textures because they're not pre-bundled. This is our team test build where instead of relying on textures being pre-packaged, you would sideload them like you normally would.
Right.
So if you don't have textures set to be loaded, like your textures and your normals, they're not going to load unless you put them in the correct location. And again, I iterate, in the future, all of those textures will be pre-packed. You're not going to have to worry about like, oh, where do I put the textures, or did I, delete textures, misplace them, whatever. So it looks like your arm cannon, though, you have your normal maps and
yes,
specular working on them correctly.
We've done a lot. I did a lot of work on the arm cannon. What I essentially did for the arm cannon was remodel the entire cannon in 3ds Max, which is your general 3D modeling software, and I made it such that the UVs line up 1:1 with the textures in game, so that way when I baked the high poly model onto the low poly model, it would retain the curved edges in terms of normal maps. So now if you notice when you enter a decent lighting, or even out here, that the edges of the arm cannons are actually slightly curved and are not razor sharp edges like you would normally see on the previous screenshots, if you guys have been following up on the updates in the Aether Prime group. The arm cannon edges are now much softer and the light bounces off much better as it would off of a curved cylindrical surface, as opposed to a more angular octagonal dodecagonal, which is a 10-sided polygon figure.
So I see Sub-Zero Winters is asking why we can't modify the game. We do not condone piracy at all. We are not including the ISO just because that's just for legal reasons. We do not want to be sued by Nintendo. That's a great way of getting sued, is, oh, here, we prepackaged a copy of a game you didn't pay for. Modifying the game directly, like any patching or ISO hacks or anything like that goes, the reason we cannot pre-package those is because it would require basically pre-patching the game, then including it. Now, the nice thing is, because you are side-loading a game, you can patch your own ISO. It'll still work the same. It's not like it has to be preloaded in Metroid Prime Remastered for it to work. So that's why we're not including mods like that.
That's right. And more to put it simply, think of this mod as like another Skyrim mod or Fallout mod that you normally see on the Nexus or someplace else. It's simply a mod that enhances your overall gameplay experience and visual fidelity of the game to match it up to not necessarily current standards, but have it more appealing, so that
just to modernize it
to a point where it's a little more acceptable, because we do understand that games like Prime, which are absolutely great and fantastic to play, but blown up on a big screen and in 1080p, some of the textures do look extremely muddy.
Yeah, they don't quite hold up. I mean, a lot of the textures, I'd say the vast majority of them are only 256 res, which is decent, but that's pretty low. I mean, even 512 is pushing it, and in my opinion 720 isn't really HD. So we're going to have 4K and I think, don't we have some 2K textures we're going to be adding as well? We kind of have a range between 1080p and 4K.
Yeah, So, Sub-Zero Winters has a question, which is a very good question. Is this based only for the trilogy version? For now, yes, especially in terms of the controls that you see, and are only restricted to the trilogy version. However, the graphics, the visual stuff, such as the lighting, the textures, can also be used on the GameCube version. It's just that we have not created a package for the GameCube version just yet.
Yeah,
we're still,
it's definitely possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible though. But what we cannot do with the GameCube version is have the free aim mouse controls that we do right now.
Right.
Load up another texture, the water texture that I recently made a month back for.
Well, and the nice thing, just a side note here on the GameCube version, while we haven't actually started on it right now, implementing it will take a long time, but it won't necessarily be hard, if that makes sense, because the textures are more or less identical. It's just the file names. We're dealing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of file names, and we can't just take these textures and then try to load them in the GameCube version. It wouldn't work that way, unfortunately. We'd have to create a separate payload. Now, I've been on the side, I'm working on a script, a very, 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 very basic script. Technically, the rest of the team wouldn't have to do anything unless it's very specific to certain textures, where I take our texture pack, I run the script, and it basically duplicates them with the correct names for the GameCube version.
Well, the GameCube version, the textures are actually the same name. It's only the folder that goes in that's different name.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I would think that they would be different.
Nope, they're all the same.
Pretty much are identical.
They are.
Wow, I knew I should have asked. I assumed they would be different, but if that's the case, that makes this even easier. It's literally okay. So, God damn it! I wish I'd asked sooner. So that makes this even simpler. Literally, this is all I have to do now. When I compile this, all I have to do is make a separate project with a different folder name, and then just recompile it. Right. I will, of course, be removing a couple of things for the GameCube version, like the Prime Hack controls and all that, just because they won't work with it. I may still use the Prime Hack Ishiruka build, though, just because it's already there. We already know it works. It's just the interface would be different. So, I'm sure that the community who's more focused on a GameCube version is happy to hear that, because it's essentially me just changing the name of something, removing a couple of minor things, and then recompiling it, and it's done.
Yeah, the only issue with the GameCube widescreen hack sometimes has issues. Like I'll get crashing on the game at points because of the widescreen hack. But you can do other things to get around that though. But yeah, that's just one of the things. But yeah, man, it's working in Dolphin 5.
And I'm also contemplating making a version that does not actually utilize the normal maps, just the actual upscale textures themselves. It would be, for one thing, it'd be a much smaller payload, and for another, if people aren't necessarily equipped with the most powerful PC, or they just don't meet the requirements, they could use.
That's a good idea, because Dolphin 5 has Vulkan support.
Right.
And it runs great. Trilogy runs great in Vulkan. I wish Ishiruka had Vulkan so bad, because it runs amazing, but you won't be able to get the maps.
Ishiruka has Vulkan. Ishiruka does have Vulkan.
It doesn't run as good though. Not even close. Yeah, dude. They just updated 5.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Ishiruka, the repository for it, the fork, is updated almost as soon as than the standard version is. I don't follow it and I don't actively develop it myself. Like occasionally I poke my nose in and see what's going on with the code, but I'm pretty sure it's as up to date as the regular Dolphin. I think there are some things though that they do not change for whatever reason. I wouldn't know. But yeah, I mean, it should be pretty accurate. Especially
another thing is that not all the shaders are the same. Like Ishiruka shader, I don't know. Vulkan. In Vulkan, there's only certain shaders you can use. I know in 5 you can use there's like a special bloom they've made for Vulkan that actually looks really cool. So yeah, that's another
You
thing.
just can't catch a break getting up there,
dude. Hey, and it's
sorry,
working.
I'm just watching this, and he like can't get through this bridge with the morph ball.
Dude, yeah, Trilogy though. Trilogy's working in Dolphin 5 for fine. So it's just Ishiruka I'm having issues with.
Well, and another part of like just to kind of answer an unasked question that I know is out there for the community. So like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, they're starting with the Trilogy version, and some people are fine with it. Some people may have a problem with it. Just from a developer standpoint, just to let you guys know, it's always good to work your way down from the most complicated thing as opposed to going up. Because if, let's say we develop this for GameCube and we're like, okay, awesome, we have our controls set up, we have our texture set up, we have everything set up, and then people are like, well, you know, we do want Trilogy support, and even if that was a thought we already had going into this, I would have to, at least on my end, for all the code and everything I put into this, I would have to change a lot. It'd be much harder jumping up to a more updated version of the game than going down. So that's part of why we're doing that.
Right.
Also, another thing to keep in mind is that think of like the version that Mr. Mendelli mentioned to have the game without any normal maps. That would mean that it's likely that you won't see such water effects if you don't have normal maps. Think of it as like those medium, high, ultra settings that you have in a regular PC game. You're sort of thinking on those terms so as to optimize for people that don't have the beefiest CPU. And more than your GPU, it's actually your CPU that's gonna play the more important role in your performance of this game. Because Dolphin, or actually emulators in general, are more
CPU
intensive in terms of usage than GPUs. So it's important that you look at your CPU's clocks. Make sure that you set your PC to the high performance mode, or whatever tricks that you have. If it's an overclockable one, you may overclock it.
Yeah, overclocking would be ideal. Although for our users, just a little side note, because some people don't know this.
That's right.
If you're watching this and you're like, okay, I'm gonna overclock the hell out of my CPU to get the best performance, please, for the love of God, do not like watch a 5-minute video or read like a random blog post. Say, okay, I need this software, and then crank it to max. Like, you will burn out your CPU. Please, 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 if you're not experienced in overclocking, do your research. It is very easy to permanently damage your CPU if you do not do it correctly.
That's right. Now, the few stutters and hitches that you notice while I'm playing this game are occurring due to a 4K water map that is being loaded into the game at the moment, which is going to be downscaled to 2K for optimization reasons, obviously. Loading a 4K dynamic normal map is extremely taxing, especially on the emulator itself.
Oh yeah. I see that Dark Snyder is asking about our recommended clock speed. I would say an absolute minimum of
2.5 gigahertz would be recommended. A minimum minimum I'd say don't go below 2.75.
Yeah. And then as far as Mr. McGill's asking about the lighting, so yeah, some of the lighting in this game is definitely off. We are aware of that. These normal maps are experimental. These are they were literally normal maps I generated using a custom action script I generated in Photoshop, where I point Photoshop to a folder and I tell it, okay, make normal maps for these, and it goes through and it makes like literally the most basic bitch normal maps. Yeah, and that is not, I do not recommend doing that ever. We just did it to give this presentation the appearance of a proof of concept, to show that we actually can utilize lighting on surfaces. This is by no means final. The final normal maps are we're going to put a lot more time into them and care, and they're going to be far more refined. So we're not going to get weird surfaces where it's like, okay, why is this dirt glossy, or things like that. So.
And the lighting in this area of the game's going to change, guys, because we've yet to do the light maps for this area.
That's right.
Yep.
So there's going to be the lighting's going to be a lot better, and the shadows are going to be high res, and there's going to be a lot more shadows and more depth.
Whoa. That guy just startled me. He just cropped up like right behind me. And he like, bah! So, as you can see, while I'm sort of dashing around, well, the main reason I'm doing this right now is to show you guys the new reflection maps that have been added into the game to make the metallic objects look and feel a lot more metallic. Well, and also if you notice the arm cannon, the material now does feel like it's a rounded metallic surface as opposed to previously just have it be matte painted gunmetal of some sort.
Yeah, kind of a plain Jane texture / palette scheme. Phase on Madness is saying, I'm pretty sure that the minimum specs for Dolphin 5.0 are pretty close to the requirements for MPR. Care to elaborate? So this is just running really almost an identical copy of Ishiruka Dolphin. Now, if you don't know what Ishiruka Dolphin is a custom fork that utilizes more graphical settings than regular Dolphin would be. Basically, it's taking full advantage of what Dolphin Emulator.
You went dead there, Mendelli.
You went dead, Mr. Mendelli. Is everything alright? Looks like we are having a few connection issues with Mr. Mendelli. He'll be back up. Jason, I'm just gonna message him on Discord,
okay,
letting him know that his. Give me a sec here, guys.
No problem. Yeah, guys. So we're doing a lot of work, man. It's been a lot has been added just since the past update video. The lighting, the reflections, all those things tend to be like more polished stuff, but since we're going to be releasing the test, we wanted to add that polish now so you guys can get a good idea of what the final product's going to be like.
So moving on now, as Jason mentioned before, regarding the light maps, and as I enter this room, you're gonna notice that the shadows are of a much higher resolution and are so much crisp as compared
to
you
hear me?
Rooms. Hey, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I have no idea what happened there. But sorry, go ahead as you were.
Welcome back. Alright, so as I was saying before, the light maps, every single room has its own light map, so to speak. Now the next room, which is the one ahead of us, is the Chozo Plaza. This is the Chozo entrance, and we have the light maps baked out for almost the entirety of Orpheon and of Chozo, of this one Chozo entrance. The shadows are much sharper, and the overall lighting is more accurate to what the developers actually intended it to be.
Right.
The original light maps were usually 64 by 64 or at the max 256 by 256 pixelated mess.
Yeah, it's really pixelated.
And it's not just the shadows, but it affects the color, the actual lighting. It changes. It's way more realistic, up-res.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and there's just more objects that cast shadow.
Also, we found a little bit of a hack now of getting soft shadows into the game, which look more accurate in terms of lighting and just look so much better as compared.
You can show them the evac room, right? The evac room.
Sharp shadows. That's right. I can show you guys the evac room. And
sweet.
The only thing, however, is that these light maps take forever to bake.
Oh god.
So if you're talking about,
hey, we've been tag teaming it though, man. We've been tag teaming. Got 27 rooms done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
We got 27 rooms done, and if you were to bake them at native 4K, we're looking at 15 hours per room or 24 hours per room.
Yeah, you're looking at a month just to bake them, and then you got to get them into the game. The process of just tediousness.
Yeah. So we came up with this really nifty little hack, which is simply using Photoshop and a blur filter, is where we upscale a 1K normal map to 4K and then apply a blur filter, and we use a special new resampling technique that is provided in the latest versions of Photoshop, which allow us to upscale really well without losing all the details. And adding a blur onto the light map actually enables us to get a soft shadow.
It looks great.
Right.
Overall, the result is just absolutely spectacular.
Do you have a save on the Orpheon? You should. And it's
I don't think I have a save on the Orpheon because they're all in the
you could
form
just
of
start
save
it over.
states. I'm just gonna open a new file.
Okay.
Right.
A new.
I see Mr. Miguel here is curious as to DJ talking about the light map. So some people don't know this, but DJ, he's also working on another HD project, which I'm also part of. He actually stepped in for a little bit, and he's a real team player. He came in and he helped us with some of the light maps, some of the UV stuff. So a lot of the stuff that we were kind of hung up on. So we do have some of his work in here. He had to leave the team. I don't know if he's going to come back or not, but he wanted to focus on his project. I don't want to say too much right now, just because it's still in the works. But there are some things he's kind of wanting to get out soon. So I'm working with him to hopefully get that stuff out.
Right. It's a very interesting approach, and I really like his art style and his approach to the whole stylistic terms that he's taking. It looks really,
same.
Yeah, it looks really nice and definitely worth checking out as well.
DJ is asking here, this isn't something I would know, that's why I can't answer it, but he's saying, wouldn't doing light maps in that way introduce improper borders? What do you think?
It's a good point, DJ, you brought up. Yes, it does introduce improper orders, but we sort of have to manually go and rename them by extracting the light maps per room using save states. So essentially what we do is we enter each room, save a state, close the game, reopen, and then reload the save state so as to only get the light maps from that room. And then we sort of match the light maps with the original light maps, and then we rename them accordingly. So it's a bit of a tedious process, as you can see, but it doesn't take as long as it actually sounds. The process is fairly simple once you get used to it. It's just more so of grinding it out. It's a bit of a grind, I'd say. It's kind of one of those games like Minecraft where you just keep mining and grinding and mining and grinding. The process is pretty much that.
Thank you. So yeah, it does definitely sound tedious. And also, again, keep in mind for anyone watching, a lot of what we have here is rough. It's not finished, it's not a final product,
right.
And we're working very hard on making sure that the final product is refined, because again, most of the normal maps, unless I'm mistaken here, if one of you guys want to correct me, just because I didn't look through everything when I packaged it, I just packaged it. But the vast majority of the maps being used are the ones I auto-generated, aren't they?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and those have very, very, very shallow depth because, again, they were all done automatically. You can't, with normal maps, you cannot just say, okay, here's all these textures and I want them normalized. Depending on a texture, like think about it this way, for a surface like metal, okay, like a panel or something, even if there are a couple of layers to it visually, they're going to be mostly flat. But if you take an organic texture or structure or face like a moss or water or rock or something like that, you're going to have more natural dips in it. So the normal maps, some areas might be high, some areas might be low. And if you take, let's say I auto-normalize Chozo Ruin textures with Orpheon textures, okay, sure, maybe they look great for metal because they're really shallow and flat and consistent, but that's not going to translate very well at all to rock structures and more natural faces. So again, this is just a proof of concept to show you guys how we plan on utilizing the lighting abilities and graphical capabilities of Ishiruka Dolphin.
That's correct. Thanks, Mr. Mendelli. It looks like we have some space pirate trouble right in front of us, and the good thing about the metallic maps that we added now apply to the space pirates and anything that's metallic in the game, because all the reflection maps are, or some may want to call them as HDRIs, are actually based on the environment that you are in. So for Chosen Ruins, we'll have a different set of reflection maps as opposed to Talon Overworld, and I went through the process of baking out a realistic looking metallic sphere using Iray, which is a 3D renderer, which is extremely taxing, and it's sort of like the ray trace stuff that you're seeing from NVIDIA recently. So I did bake out a 3D metallic sphere using Substance Painter, and use that as a basis for creating the metallic maps, which therefore give the more realistic feel of actually being a metal texture.
Well, and another thing we're doing with Heckle is, well, at least something I'm doing because I'm relatively new to texture artwork. One thing I'm kind of experimenting with is Heckle, where we can dump models of the characters and bipeds and all that stuff, and I'm kind of experimenting with painting over the models directly, so that, you know, instead of looking, okay, here's this flat texture, I want to upscale it or I want to make it look better, I'm just going to draw over what's there. We have other resources available to us to help us really, really refine all of our texture work to a T. Not even just, you know, using things like Substance Designer. Substance Designer is great. It's been a big help for us. And unless I'm mistaken, you and RDM have been using it heavily to make a lot of the textures.
That's mostly what I use. I mostly use Substance Painter and Substance Designer in order to get my work done.
RDM's just basically
RDM
using Photoshop.
He's a great artist who has been helping us a lot, especially with the man-made materials of the Orpheon,
like her suit, and
like her suit,
the enemy textures,
the armor of Meta Ridley. All those kind of things is something that he's really good at. As you can see, you can definitely see a lot of his texture work in some of these areas, which are extremely up-res. And speaking of which, right now I am in the Orpheon technically, so this is probably the best way I could find right now of getting inside the Orpheon. Or rather the fastest way. I will be reloading a new save just to show you guys a few additional details that we did do.
Are you by chance going to be showing off the Parasite Queen, or do you think that's something we should hold off on?
We're trying to get the Parasite Queen done for the alpha release, so I'll definitely be showing them. Yeah, why not actually? Why don't we have a small little boss fight with the Parasite Queen? A lot of the textures in the Orpheon are done. However, there's still a few that are pending, such as especially in these tunnels and tubes. But a lot of the textures, you got to keep in mind, will look much better with the improved lighting system that we are working on. Leagues better, in fact, to the point that you can even see ambient occlusion and all those kind of effects sort of automatically generated based on the natural lighting. So you aren't changing anything drastically in the game or making it look very different. We're trying to keep the look of the game as original as possible to what the developers, Retro Studios, originally intended it to be.
Yeah, that's one thing. When we were talking about, you know, art direction, stylizing, you know, remastering these textures, is, you know, are we going to stick with the original art style or not? Are we just going to make a super crisp, super modern looking game? And it was a very unanimous decision that we wanted to retain Metroid Prime's art style. I mean, I remember as a kid, because I got I actually got the GameCube bundle itself. And I remember, like, the first thing I did was I opened Metroid Prime because I wanted that game so bad, and just looking through the instruction manual, just some of, like, the grungy, gritty artwork and just the style they had. I loved it, and I know a lot of the fans, I mean, there may be some that want to go the direction I mentioned earlier, you know, crisper, more modern, but I know a lot of the fans are going to want us to stay as true as possible to the original art, and I have no problem with that. I think that was the best decision to go with. I mean, yes, it's more modern and it looks better, and if you follow us, you know, we post textures occasionally. You will see that, okay, yeah, they look better. But again, it matches the art style. It matches this universe. We didn't really want this game to feel like a different game in the sense that in its entirety, it's a different game, or even just a different Metroid game. Yes, we have more modernized features like Prime Hack and controller support and things like that. But as far as the immersion of the game goes, I really, and the rest of the team, we really wanted to retain the aesthetic of this game.
Yes, as much as possible.
So I've pretty much completed a walk through the crashed freaking Orpheon. Got a few turrets over here.
So I see Mr. Miguel here is saying that he doesn't think we can modify the models. We couldn't do it. Well, okay, yes and no. Technically, we could change the models in game, but that would again require actually modifying the game. But we can modify the models outside of the game for purposes for texture work and things like that. I've kind of tweaked with that a little, but truth be told, it's not a good idea, because even let's say I take a model and I'm like, okay, this is too low poly for me. I want to upscale the poly count on this and make it smoother, just so that when I paint my textures, they look better. Well, okay, yeah, they look great on the model in Blender outside of the game, but if I try to import those textures into the game unmodified, because again, we're pushing for not actually doing hard mods, it won't translate correctly. So it's a gray zone. We can, but we're not going to.
It is a little. It's also a very tedious process because of the way Metroid Prime's original engine makes use of the textures. They sort of wrap them around in a very unique way, sort of unique to its own engine, which is something that I'm not very familiar with, and also is an extremely time-consuming process. Like the arm cannon that you see here is actually a thing that I had to remodel the entire thing from scratch, simply because I couldn't up-res the mesh resolution directly, because the entire model was absolutely broken. It was a completely broken mess, and I had to go back and fix every single vertex and triangulation that happened to occur. Yeah. So it took me around 6 hours to get the whole thing done, because it was a simple enough model. But having to do that for say for example Samus's armor, or the environment of Orpheon or something like that, would take forever, and it's not reasonable, it's not practical. Even the mesh that I have used as a high poly mesh for the arm cannon still has its own issues. And if I were to change even a slight UV, if I were to make a slight UV change, that thing would instantly make it incompatible to work with the current Metroid Prime's engine. Yeah.
I see Mr. Miguel is talking about the infinite speed thing. I actually know what he's talking about. In the speedrunner community, there is a...
Yeah.
It's almost like a glitch where you can abuse the physics of the game. There's actually an infamous one in Choza Ruins in that hallway with lava. I always forget what it's called. But if you sit on top of some rocks, and I don't think you can do it in the trilogy version. I'm pretty sure you can only do it in the GameCube version. But if you boost ball in the right spot long enough, it actually makes the texture
disappear.
Wow, cull. Yeah, it culls the texture, and you basically can warp at like light speed through the game. It's it can break the game. Like I've actually I did it before and it crashed it.
I've seen that happen a lot, where people actually use it to skip a lot of boss fights in the game.
Yeah, and it can be used for quite a few things actually, but
it's almost hilarious at times, because you suddenly have this morph ball without anything in it. And it's just this big ball of light that's just floating around in one corner of the room.
Whoa, what was going on with the ice on that? Did you see that? It was like, it seemed kind of stretched around the model for a second.
I think that's how it's always been, isn't it?
Usually when you freeze an enemy, I mean, it kind of expands the model a little bit, but it still closely follows the basic silhouette of whatever you're freezing.
Alright, let's have a look again.
That was kind of odd. When you froze him, when you came in there, it like looked warped off of him. No, not quite like that. It was much more exaggerated. It was, I don't know if, yeah, right there. Oh, it's possibly, yeah, because it's like partially open, I think. But do you see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, it's probably because the way the plant opens. But I kind of like how they sort of made it freeze. It's kind of, that's a really hard thing to pull off, even in modern game engines. The ice beam, the mechanism of the ice beam and the ice spreader.
I love the ice spreader. I remember the first time I found that.
One of my favorite weapons in the entire trilogy.
I felt so smart when I was like 11 years old and I found that. I was like, oh my god, I bet nobody else has found this. But no, people knew about it. A lot of my friends didn't, but they're like, oh, you know, I'd bring them to my house and I show them all the missile combo weapons. Like, where did you get that? And I'm like, oh, wouldn't you like to know?
Right.
And I eventually showed them, but
Alright, so now now I'm gonna load up a new save of oops, I opened the Ishiruka version. I'm gonna open a new save for Metroid Prime and gonna show them the frigate Orpheon and have a boss fight with the Parasite Queen.
Sweet. So, did Samus Prime leave us?
No, I accidentally dropped it, but
okay. So DJ had another question. He said, how will you handle the textures that don't need materials as Fong lighting? Fong lighting? Is that what he meant to say?
Yeah,
is applied to everything.
Okay, so the general idea is that for stuff that does not need specularity, we're gonna hit the base specularity all the way back, because it tends to make everything look extremely shiny and reflective, as you can see currently right now. So the solution to that is that all the essential textures that Samus interacts with for the most part are gonna have all their maps baked out, such as the normal and the spec maps. However, the ones that are sort of tucked away in a corner are the ones that are going to be missing the normal and spec maps, because you're not even going to be able to see them most of the time anyway.
Right. I'm noticing here, by the way, I just want to point out real quick, your Miis are extremely glossy and shiny. They're almost metallic.
Yes. Yeah.
What's
that's because of this. My specularity is cranked all the way up.
Okay.
Which is also which is another
Ishiruka thing.
Which is an Ishiruka setting, and this is I kind of did that purposely so that it showcases normals a lot better. And the auto normals, the auto generated normals, I should specify this very clearly, that if I have specularity cranked up to the maximum, it won't affect the maps that already have specularity baked onto them. So this is just for the textures that don't have any specularity on them. For example, these Mii bubbleheads here.
I did notice though, when we implemented the HD light maps in the Orpheon, the normals, even the auto-generated ones, seem to react much more noticeously than they did before. So that's beautiful.
Overall, using the light maps has been a tremendous improvement for us. And here we go, a new skybox, and good thing it's not stretched anymore.
Yeah, I noticed that. What ended up fixing that? Because I know the skyboxes in the game are kind of weird. I've been poking around in PWE and other resources, and it's kind of weird how they're handled.
Yeah, all the skyboxes aren't actually circular or cylindrical. They're giant tetrahedrons, which is kind of confusing at the same point, because like, why would you use a tetrahedron? It has corners and you can see the skybox bending in places if the lighting isn't right. So yeah, places such as this, in the beginning of the game, has a little bit of mismatched lighting. I did a bit of experimentation with the few textures in this area. You can see a few texture issues on that panel right above the red buttons that you shoot. You can see that one light triangle and a dark triangle sort of jammed into each other. It's a very minor thing, something that you're likely not to notice. But there are some issues that still do exist, so obviously, I'm gonna say this again, this is not the final look of the game.
No.
Now you're gonna see, in this shot, you're gonna definitely see the metallicness really show.
Oh yeah.
So the whole goal of me making the reflection maps was to make the armors look as metallic as possible. The arm cannon, her armors, ignore the stutters, they're just because if I haven't configured my issue properly yet.
So I noticed here, really quickly, Mr. Miguel is saying what happened to the color. He remembers Talon 4 being much more colorful in Samus Prime's video, and that's true. That's because he was utilizing reshade.
Yes.
Isn't that correct? That's what was doing that? Yeah. In this build,
Yeah.
we don't have reshade integrated yet. That is a goal. I do want to integrate reshade, but because of the way it works, it's a little tricky. Normally with reshade, you put the executable next to a game and you run it, and you know it sets itself up and it just reads the game automatically. But because of the way this game is packaged, it can't do that. So currently we cannot run reshade on top of MPR. But I just tonight, literally just tonight, I got some base code for that running, and I have it integrated. It's just not functioning correctly yet. So I'm gonna try probably by the end of the week here to properly integrate reshade as an option. Now, I'll be honest, I don't want to add reshade in this alpha. The reason being is polishing it up and making sure it works correctly is possibly going to push us past our due date for the alpha, and I don't want to delay it again. So you can expect to see it in more stable builds. But that is, just to answer your question, that is why it does look different, is we don't have those post-processing filtering effects going on.
Oh, don't worry, we're probably going to work on fixing the planet texture. The sharpness on the texture is a little high, so the forms are a little too noticeable. Maybe we could soften up the surface of the planet just a tad bit.
Isn't the oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you were saying?
I was just going to ask, because I can't remember correctly. I actually have that texture on my computer, and you know, just like any image file, it's completely flat. But don't they actually wrap it around a massive semi-spherical model?
Yes, they do. They wrap it around a semi-spherical model.
It's huge. That texture right there is like 8K.
Okay, the controls, I definitely am not used to the controls for the scan visor. It's something I really need to get used to.
Shift 2.
Shift and 2.
Yeah, you gotta hold shift, hit 2, then hold 2 and let go of shift. That's the only way it'll stay on. Like, it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah. Prime Hack is definitely something I'm pushing for, just because I think it's an amazing mod, and I know there are people that want it. I've been working very, very, very closely with Shio these last few days. I kind of feel bad for all the stuff I've had him do, but there were a few bugs Prime Hack had that I asked him. I was like, hey, you know, do you think maybe we could polish those out for this alpha? And he was very generous, very helpful, and communicated very well. And we actually got it running to the point where it is now. There were a few bugs with it that, while they were minor, are gone. Take, for instance, if you load up the game fresh, not like starting from a save. If you load the game fresh, what's weird is you couldn't look horizontally until you gave the game horizontal input, not from your mouse, but by selecting a beam or a visor. And it was really confusing because even on the Prime Hack server, some people, like even myself, were like, well, I can only look up and down. And then when I discovered what the bug was, I worked with Shio, and he figured out that it was actually a value, because Prime Hack utilizes RAM hacking or memory hacking. There's a value that was overriding his input. And it's not done in the most polished manner, but essentially he fixed it really quick by throwing away a value upon execution, so that this way, when you start a game, instead of being locked to only looking on the y-axis, you can look on x and y. On top of the profile, I refined his profile a little bit just because his was kind of clunky. It works, but it didn't feel very smooth. So I'm going to include his profile as well as mine. But yeah, no, there are still a few minor bugs with it, and I'm pretty sure I've touched base on every possible bug that there is, or every current bug there is now. And so far, Shio is saying that all of them are relatively easy fixes. It's just he's really busy, and this is an alpha, so it's going to be a little rough. So it's not it's doable, but it's just not a rush right now.
Wow, the Parasite Queen textures looks really good.
They do.
Especially its back right now, this dead parasite that I'm looking at.
It's too bad you don't have like a flashlight or something. That would be amazing. But I mean, even
just charge beam.
I got a charge beam, yeah.
Go look in his tail, Ray. Go use the charge beam in his tail.
Use the charge.
Serious, there's in his tail. There's a little present in there.
So we have a couple of questions.
Oh
DJ.
shit! Yeah, it looks. Oh my god! Yeah. Wow.
DJ's asking
so cool.
about what the plans for optimization are. We're going to push some minimum spec requirements. Yeah, that looks great. Oh my god, just the lighting, the textures. Didn't RDM do these?
Yes.
Or was that DJ?
Yeah. This.
He did it, yeah. I mean, that's his strength for sure, is like enemy textures and stuff. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've got him working on the pirates right now, so the pirates hopefully will be done for the alpha too.
RDM has done an absolutely stunning job. Like, all credits to him for the base colors and stuff. Like, wow.
But so DJ was asking about
the normals of this. They're completely
they're off.
Yeah.
Those are probably just because they're auto-generated. They're just very flat and bland. Yeah, those are completely off. But anyhow, DJ wants to know what our plans for optimization are. So there are some settings that kind of have to be met. Well, there's a baseline that has to be met with the settings. Where like we have to have EFB. What was it? EFB textures on, or EFB scaling on? What was that setting? Samus Prime? I don't remember.
Oh, EFB copies on.
Right. There are
copy
a few
texture only.
Right. So we have some dolphin settings that need to be on, and we also have some minimum spec requirements. Now, this alpha, we're not going for like even ideal, really. We're kind of going with the bare bones requirements. And basically, if you meet those or higher, you should be good. So another thing, kind of going back to Reshade actually increases the benchmark.
But we're only using 2 shaders, though. We're only going to use 2.
Right, but even still, just using Reshade alone does change the minimum spec requirements, which is another part of why I don't want to add it to the alpha.
Right.
But we're going through, we're seeing what the most ideal settings are and things like that. Now, one thing that I actually remembered I could do tonight, like things like scaled EFB copy and stuff, there's actually a way I can implement in the build, so like as soon as you set it up and run it, they're already turned on just for the game. Dolphin Emulator has a very interesting feature that is really, I haven't seen in another emulator that's great. It has basically individualized game settings. For those of you who have ever poked around in your Dolphin folder, you will have noticed a folder called Game Settings. And there's nothing in it, nothing ever goes in it, and that's because you have to actually configure it yourself. Kind of like textures, if you take your game's ID and copy it, and then make a INI file, a settings file with that ID, using some code syntax and certain parameters, you can't do everything with it, you can set up one game to run differently than another. A lot of people use global settings, meaning settings that affect every game. So like, okay, you set up Dolphin Emulator, it works great for, half of your collection, but not so much with the others. And you know how to get them to work correctly, but you have to change it every single time. Well, that's where these game settings come in handy. So like for our particular example with Metroid Prime Remastered, with the EFB copies on, I can make a game settings file that's pre-packaged that just by default forces that on. Now, I didn't want to push for settings that we are like, okay, no, this has to be on, just because I felt like it may interfere with some users. But unfortunately, just because of the way this is, because this is a mod and a very hacked together mod at that, some things have to be forced. But again, that's why we're communicating with the community about like what we're changing, why we're changing it. and also saying, okay, you know, here are spec requirements. Here are certain things you need to meet. You know, some people say this works really good. Others say this doesn't. And this is a huge part of why we're doing this alpha. This is, again, to get community feedback because, okay, sure, you know, it works great on Samus Prime's computer or Ray's computer or my computer, but it doesn't mean it's going to work exactly the same on yours. So, and it'll never be that way. It'll never just be a drag and drop. It works universally every single time. That's just not something you can really do with emulation or any game for that matter. But we're pushing for the most user-friendly experience and the most accessible experience at that. We really want as many people to be able to play this as possible. So, you know, again, I iterate, that's why we're doing a lot of the things we're doing. I suppose, you know, just providing the textures and giving some recommendations on how to set up Dolphin would work, but implementing some of the things I've done, like my launcher, as well as Prime Hack itself, kind of just make it a more user-friendly experience. For those of you that follow us but aren't actually part of testing, there are other things I'm doing, like let's say you have a computer that has issues where like either you can't install DirectX or the required Visual C++ redistribution, or it's damaged, or you're having some sort of issue with it. I can actually pre-package those in this at the cost of, I think it's like 130 megabytes or something, where you can literally drag and drop this on a blank slate computer so long as it meets the base spec requirements and run it. You don't have to install anything else. So, and I actually just ran a poll for that. That was pretty unanimous. Everyone said, yeah, just pre-package that. But, you know, the focal point is definitely the remaster itself, getting the graphics and all of that optimized. The starting point, though, part of why we're pushing so hard for distributing...
Uh-oh, lost you.
Lost you. Mr. Mendelli, unfortunately, it looks like the connection is broken off again. Jason, could you message him?
Yeah.
So that I don't have to exit the Prime Trilogy. Okay. So, pretty much in terms of Orpheon, as you've been noticing, there's been quite a significant change in terms of textures. Everything looks so much sharper than it normally would. There's still a few old textures that are being used in a few areas, like here, for example, but they can clearly be distinguished from the other textures that are out here and here. All of them will have their own generated normal and spec maps, so you don't need to worry about the fact that they don't look right now, because they'll look very different when we actually apply its material attributes to it. Right, now it's time for us to jump into the Parasite Queen. Oh, I can never get used to these controls. Alright. Mr. Mendelli, are you back?
Nope. Think he left. He had an issue. Yeah, dude, I love this part of the game.
Oh, look at the
I've only played through this like a million times since March.
What's funny is that, no, as much as you try entering in a morph ball, the cutscene switches you back into the suit. So the cutscene suits and the transition suits are actually very different models on their own. The cutscene is a lot more detailed and is of a higher mesh resolution. And here we go. That's the new Parasite Queen.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I actually just remembered. I know
That's
why
all right.
this is happening. Comcast is being shitty and they're throttling me. They literally called me today. Like, they've been trying to get a hold of me. And they called me. They're like, yeah, we noticed there's some issues in your area that you reported, and we really need to get a tech out to look at your box and all this and that. And I'm like, I'm not having issues. I don't know what you're talking about. They're like, oh, well, you know, we really want to get a tech out there to look at your hardware. And I'm like, well, I don't need it. I have my own setup. I know how to set up my network. And literally when I got home today is when I started having internet connections. I think they want to fuck with my router for some reason. So, yay, conglomerates.
Oh my god.
Fuck you, Comcast.
You guys should
I
move
hope
to
you're
Canada.
listening.
You're gonna shut us down, man.
I think they're also butthurt that I basically got a 300 megabyte package for dirt cheap because they tried screwing me over, and they I don't know. I feel like that's created some sort of issue, conflict of interest with them, because I've had 300. Yeah, well, so okay. So when I first got Comcast, I had their base internet package. I don't remember my download speed. I want to say it was like in the range of 30 or 35 megabytes, something like that. And then like a few months later, they're like, "Hey, you want to try out a free cable package?" And I should have just listened to my gut. I'm like, they're gonna like try to screw me over with this. I know they are.
Oh my goodness.
So I asked them, I'm like, "So what are like the cancellation fees like?" And they're like, "Well, as long as you cancel within the month, there's there's no charges or anything like that." And like immediately I knew, I'm like, they're totally gonna be like, "No, we can't do that." So I go to cancel it because me and my roommate didn't want it. We didn't use it. And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna cost you this much and that." So I took my box, ripped it out of the wall, not literally. I was down at their office immediately. I'm like, "All right, close my account." "Oh, what seems to be the problem, sir?" "Well, you gave me a 3-month trial. I canceled in the middle of it, and now you're telling me you want to charge me for it." "Oh, well, I'm sure we could work something out." So they boost my speed for the same price, $60, to 300 megabytes. And like they've been trying to up my bill. Every time my bill goes up, I call them right away. I'm like, "Hey, you said my bill wasn't going to change." But yeah, it's just been a back and forth game. Like that's just what ISPs do. They play these games with money. They're constantly trying to screw people over. But yeah, no, I get 300 megabytes of download.
60?
Yeah.
Dude, that's how much I pay for like 1.5 gigabits per second.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm paying 60, which is like 75 Canadian or 70 Canadian for 1.5 gigabits per second, which is the speed what I have right now.
That hurts me. Don't tell me that. Yeah, no, I know I could get better, and they are. I've been contemplating checking out CenturyLink, but I've been talking because I have some coworkers that have it, and they're like, it's really not that much better. American ISPs are greedy as fuck. Like, our internet could be so much better. The problem is greed is just rampant in our country right now, and companies have been getting away with this shit for so long. It's a problem. So
yeah,
I'm sure I could get better internet. Yeah. Oh yeah, I just.
Well, Canadian ISPs are doing pretty good in that regard, actually. I
yeah,
just purposely ran through a swarm of insects or parasites.
You did.
Just because it's fun. I want to run through these guys again. Where are you? Oh yeah. Goodness. Here we go, some more parasites. Oh, I love doing that. That's one of the best parts about this game are the visor effects. We should definitely work on remastering those as well, because I know that they're simply textures. I know for a fact that they're textures. We'll try and get those in for the alpha on December 28th. Hey, we're looking good so far. Ooh, what happens if you get hit by this thing? I want to check it out. I want to go in third person. Oh, there we go. Oh. Looks like there's another system. What happened to Jason? Are you there? Pause for a second. SP, your mic is disconnected. I don't know if you can hear me, but your mic is disconnected.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now you're back in time for one of the more iconic scenes, which is a Ridley. And in this case, you can also see the metallic surface looking really good on him. We also have some of the water textures that have been applied in this part of the frigate as well. Okay, we gotta fix Samus's eyebrows. Yeah, that almost looks like she has a unibrow.
Yeah. Unibrow.
This is something I just like noticed. Like, let's try and refer to the Prime 2 model to try and get it
funny. I talk shit about Comcast and I get booted off the internet.
Uh-oh. They're listening. Hey, Mendelli, I sent you a message on Discord.
Yeah, I like immediately when it happened, I was like, oh damn it, they're not gonna hear me. But yeah.
Why don't you just use a VPN?
I don't know if I want to pay for that right now. I mean, I could. I just don't know if I want to.
NordVPN was having a really good Thanksgiving deal, so for 3 years I paid like just $100.
Damn.
Yeah, for 3 years.
That's pretty good.
Like 100 Canadian, which is like around 85 USD.
Wow, that's pretty good. Quick question for you, Samus Prime. Did that occur when you tried to run it, or?
Yeah, when I try to run it, after I install it, it's the new one. It's the final build, and after I installed it, it now does that. It didn't do that the first time.
No, it didn't. Let me, because I have it here. I literally have the build right in front of my face. Gonna put you here. And
so I'm wondering if there's something like conflicting between the two mods that's causing the other one to have issues.
No, that couldn't be it because they're like islands. There's no bridges or any shared well, the only shared information would be dolphin settings, but that's just not it. Because
that's why I was thinking it was one of the INI files, because I don't understand what else it could be.
I don't know either, because I have it running here.
Everything else works.
I have it running on my computer right now. I'll just DM you this copy here. See if that works. Wow, it's only like 5 megabytes. Jeez.
5 megabytes. Wow.
Yeah.
That's small.
I compressed. Well, this is the other M mod. I compressed the hell out of it recently. I changed a few things and removed some code and did some optimizing. So it's even smaller now. I think before I had it at like 8 or 9 megabytes, something like that. I don't remember what my last install size was. But yeah, no, it's running on my computer, so there's at least that.
Well, I know I was running on mine too. That's what I don't get. I think
Microsoft is screwing with your computer, man, or something is. I have no idea what, because it's weird. Because me and Ray can run stuff fine, but it's just you now.
You might want to check your Direct3D settings. Did you try switching the renderer to OpenGL or something to see if it works?
Yeah, I tried changing the renderer. It works in 5. It just does Ishiruka. Just everything else works in Ishiruka, but Trilogy, and Trilogy works in Dolphin 5. So I don't know. It's weird.
That's very interesting.
Let me. I'm sure I've missed out on some questions here. I'm gonna reload. But you know, I don't know either. I cannot figure out why you're having so many issues.
The raindrops appear so much more significantly more.
Yeah, they look so good. They put so much effort into this game.
I know. Like, there's just so much detail that really immerses you. Samus Aran. And it actually makes you feel really good, like, especially even though the GameCube controls were extremely wonky for me, it was extremely hard for me to, especially bosses such as Tardis were incredibly difficult because of the controls. Whereas otherwise, Tardis is a very easy boss. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing hard about him. Like, not even remotely hard about him. It's just that the controls made it that much more challenging, the overall game, because when I played with the trilogy, in the veteran mode for the first time, the entire game was a piece of cake. Like, Prime 1 was a very straightforward, easy game. Prime 2, I'd say, was where the challenge actually began.
Yeah, Prime 2 has kind of always been a bit of a more challenging game, and some of it was kind of like Halo 2, where things like Boost Guardian were broken as fuck because of time constraints. I mean, they patched it in the trilogy version. They literally nerfed him because so many people complained about Boost Guardian. But yeah, no, it's just one of the interesting things about game development.
I do wish I had nerfed Spider Guardian just a little bit, because Boost Guardian wasn't always an issue for me. I think Spider Guardian always was.
Yeah, see, I never had an issue with Spider Guardian. I don't know. He was never an issue for me.
It's just that I having to navigate the morph ball over that little slope that was there, and the
well, there are some like kind of cheeky
of a cheap physics engine from 2. It just doesn't work well. I think
there are some cheats you can use on those. Well, I mean, that kind of applies for, I think, Prime 1 and 2. Prime 3 did a pretty good job about keeping people from doing it, but there are like cheats almost on some of those spider ball puzzles, kind of like getting to plasma beam, where you have to navigate that massive one.
Yeah.
There are so many areas.
Glitches. Yeah, they're all glitches essentially.
There's a bunch of shortcuts where you can just like drop straight down. That's so funny. I love
the spider wall was expanded so well in Prime in Prime 2.
Yeah,
the sheer level, the levels of mechanics that were introduced with the whole boost ball.
Mm-hmm.
What's 1 and 2?
I love those.
You know.
I think. Wait, what was your question?
Sorry, what is 1 and 2 in the Q and tab? I got it.
Yeah. I think Q or tab is 1. Yeah, because that's pause. Or no, Q is pause. There you go. Oh, I was gonna say, one thing I loved about video games, I still love about video games, is finding, out of bounds glitches and things like that. I made it a point to whenever I played a new game, it's like, okay, let's see how this game plays. All right, these are kind of how the physics are. This, I can abuse this. I can definitely abuse that. Okay, let's see how we can get out a map. That was one thing I loved about at least the earlier Halo games, is that like you were almost rewarded for going out of the map in some areas.
Bro, I don't even have to lock on anymore. This feels really good. This new control scheme, I have to tell you, feels extremely good.
Yeah,
I know.
Once you get used to it, it's so nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. I couldn't thank Shio enough for all of the work they've put into this.
Hats off to him for...
So yeah, I was actually talking to him. I was under the interpretation that we were going to have two completely separate builds for NTSC and PAL, because I thought Prime Hack had 2 separate builds to handle the game. I thought the addressing and the way the hack worked Shio had 2 separate builds, but apparently it's 2 in 1. So we literally, for textures and Prime Hack, we only need 1 build of this.
Yep, that's right. Because the PAL exports, the file nomenclature, everything that you look at is essentially the same. It's just that the resolution and the frame rate at which the PAL games run is completely different.
Yep.
In NTSC, you're used to 60 FPS and 480p natively, and on the other hand, on PAL you have 576p, which is a higher resolution technically. However, you're stuck with a lower frame rate of only 50 frames per second.
Yeah, isn't it like 54 hertz or something like that?
50 hertz.
It's just 50.
It's just
but
50.
yeah, speaking of that, because I did purchase and have since returned a PlayStation Classic. I don't know if you guys heard, but a good portion of the games use the PAL region versions of games with inferior frame rates. And there were like with GPG hacks, it was discovered you could literally force NTSC region and get a better frame rate on them. I was just like, what the hell were they thinking?
It was I think it was just a completely rush job,
It was. It's so evident that it was
rushed. They were just
rushed.
trying to get it out for the holiday season to try and get as many sales as possible. You know, they could have delayed it by even a month, and they would have just needed a month to fix the whole thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, even just a couple of the hacks that came out, like GPG hacks and Bleem, already fix a considerable amount of things, and those came out within days of the launch. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now this is gonna stand. Now this is the actual test, I'd say, for the control scheme.
I was just about to say it's gonna be interesting to see this fight, just because you're literally spinning around in a circle.
Yeah.
Ray, turn up your sensitivity to 20 and do that.
Oh no, I'm gonna fall off the damn thing.
That's what I did, dude. It was awesome.
And if I'm not mistaken, once you fall off, there is actually no clear way to get back up, is there?
I think you can get up through the backside, I want to say, but it's kind of hard, especially because this early in the game, you have like no health.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh yeah, so getting back up, you're being eaten up by that toxic water. So even if you do get up, you might end up just having really low health, and you take one war wasp sting, and I'm dead. So.
Oh no, I did die once in the GameCube version in this particular part because I fell into that acid.
Yeah, the acid screws you over. I love that though, like how you purify the water in this place by killing the Flogera.
The Flogera, that was so good. I really like that large-scale environmental change that takes place. It sort of adds so much more immersion to the game. It's like your actions actually have impact on the world around you, and that's something I want to see in Prime 4 happen.
Oh yeah. Kind of almost like a choose your own adventure where certain actions have good or bad consequences from them.
Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of Metroid Prime. It sort of lets you craft your own story to a certain extent. Based on of course, even though it's pretty much very linear and on rails, overall the experience that you have, like, you always wonder, oh, what's behind that door over there? Like earlier, like when I played Prime for the first time, I explored all of Talon World as much as I could, and I came across that ice beam door which goes into the frigate, and I didn't know exactly if that was the frigate or not, but then I realized, oh, what does that door do, I wonder? And so I went up and I got the Morph Ball Bomb, and I went back and see if it would open with the Morph Ball Bomb. It didn't open. And it just added so much more of that mystery element, which always keeps you anticipating to say, oh, what's next?
Yeah, like even stuff that, I always think that's funny about games when, you know, like conspiracy theories or ideas get thrown around about something that the developers like literally just put there just because they did. And all this effort and community thought goes into like, oh, what is this door for? And the developers are like, oh, it's just a placeholder. Whatever, you know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's kind of underwhelming to hear, but I still enjoy that. Like, I love following content creators for communities where they explore those questions. They, you know, they seek these things out. Take for example, General Heed from Gold Team Productions. I think he's basically covered everything at this point, but he goes into, you know, a lot of the glitches and a lot of the conspiracy theories and tricks and things you can do throughout the Halo games, and he goes in really full depth into what they are. Like, I remember on the mission Floodgate, there's a door out in the background that I believe, I can't remember exactly why he explored it. I think it looks like it can open, but you can't get to it normally. And he went in, I believe, with another person, maybe more, and they figured out how to get to that door, and they were like, okay, why does this door open? And, you know, they ended up figuring it out. I love seeing people delve into things like this. And it's like, again, part of why I did the sequence breaking, the map breaking. Oh yeah, we were talking about earlier. So in Halo 2, you know what the Scarab gun is, right?
I never really played Halo 2, so I'm not too familiar with it.
So in Halo 2, on the mission, is it New Mombasa? It's been a while since I've played, but there's a mission you play in the New Mombasa city, and people found out that near the very beginning of the mission, you can actually hijack a Banshee to break the boundaries of the map. And at the top of the map, well, near the top of the map, is a bridge between a couple of buildings. And if you go to the middle of it, there's literally a warning traffic cone with a plasma rifle facing up. And you can pick it up. Well, when you fire it, it fires the same beam that the Scarab does. You can decimate anything with it. It basically one-shots everything, and everyone's like, oh my god, you know, like, they put this Easter egg here, like I can just play around the city with this super destructive weapon. And you know, it became a huge part of early Halo culture. And I remember the first time my friends and I did it, we tried for like, god, because we were fucking terrible at the game at that time, but on easy it took us like probably close to an hour to get that Banshee out, because that part is kind of hard if you don't know what you're doing. But we finally got it. We're like, is this real? Like, did someone make this up? And no, it was real. And we got it, and we loved it, and it was amazing. And it's so ingrained in Halo culture. It's actually now a skull in Halo 2 Anniversary. I believe it's just called the Scarab Skull, where when you have it, all, if not select weapons, fire the Scarab Beam. But the funny thing is, going back to how, you know, sometimes developers like, oh, we just put that there for a blank reason, you know, something very anticlimactic. That Scarab gun, that's because it's just called the Scarab gun. The Scarab gun was there as essentially a placeholder for when the Scarab actually fires its beam in game. They couldn't, I don't know if it's because they couldn't or they didn't want to, but like for some reason, the beam that comes out of the Scarab itself isn't being drawn from that model. It's being drawn from that off-location gun way off map. They just kind of hit it, and they have that weapon drawn again from that area. And it wasn't an Easter egg. It wasn't really intended, but people found it, and it just kind of became iconic and symbolic. Yeah,
it became of the Halo pop culture thing.
Yeah, it's just funny little things like that. And I mean, I don't think we really get a lot of that with Metroid. There are some things, you know, like we have the whole speedrunner thing of do you save the animals or not, which I still think is hilarious. But you know, that's something I would love to see in Metroid Prime 4 is like I don't know how to explain it, almost like a game like Halo 3 where the way the world is built, you can get out of bounds. There are little, you know, Easter eggs and secrets that you can find for putting in that effort. I really, not even just with Metroid Prime 4, I want to see more games go back to the days of the early 2000s games where you're rewarded for those things, where you're rewarded for not necessarily
for the exploration and sort of discovering the lore or something. Like,
right.
I want to see that environmental storytelling be more prevalent. I feel that that's a trend that has sort of died out in the last games. But a lot of the good games, such as God of War, do that extremely well in terms of environmental storytelling. I'd say Metroid Prime Echoes, Metroid Prime 1, and God of War are probably my 3 favorite games. And from what I can tell, in terms of God of War's design and overall structure, is very, very similar to that of Metroid Prime.
Really? Yes. I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, unfortunately.
It's open world. It's got the same semi-open world narrow structure going on, except with much wider areas in the middle.
Okay.
And
sounds interesting.
And you can always go back with new upgrades to break open certain things.
To backtrack and stuff.
You can backtrack, collect more upgrades, collect more health upgrades, bonuses, secrets to find, quests, side quests to do. There is a lot of stuff, and there's also this interesting conversation that goes on between Kratos and Atreus when you're going on a boat and exploring those different areas, which you normally wouldn't do if you're just, you know, just swinging it off, doing the main quest line and just being over with.
Right. And I had a... Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish that.
I just think that the whole experience is so rewarding. Like, oh, I found this mighty Thor statue and I have to destroy it. And I'm like, wow, I can actually do that stuff in this game. And, you know, this is not a part of the main quest. It's just a side quest that exists.
Oh, it's just a little extra, some gravy.
A little extra that provides stuff for the lore. which gives you details about what kind of a person, or in terms of his personality, Thor is. Like, he's a really cruel, couldn't give a damn guy he's portrayed that way as in God of War. So he isn't portrayed like the whole Marvel, all goody good Thor, almighty Thor. He's sort of portrayed as a bit of a jerk. And you sort of learn those things about the lore by doing these little teeny tiny side quests that exist. And I kind of want to see that integrated in Metroid Prime 4, aside and separate from just the main quest.
Yeah.
Like, it could be anything. Maybe it's like a space pirate catalog that you come across and be like, oh, that space pirate were developing this technology and stuff, and then later on you come across this one room where you find that technology that the space pirates were working on, and then you realize, oh, you can actually merge it with an existing technology that you have to upgrade that technology of yours, and then it becomes a really good reward for you.
Yeah.
You know? That's kind of how God of War plays out. And that, I'd say, is probably the best part about the game, is that it's not just the main quest. Like, the main quest, no doubt, is breathtakingly good. Like, I'd say if anything, if there's any game that's ever been for me to replace Metroid Prime with, I'd replace it with the latest God of War.
Huh.
For me, I'd probably say that's a very strong statement, because I'm such a huge... I love the first 3 Prime games so much.
Yeah, I really don't want to see another polarizing shift like Other M. I don't want to see them break the momentum, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, it could work out great. You know, it could be like a dramatic shift, a paradigm shift that is for the better.
I mean, but, sure, I don't mind them playing it safe by sort of sticking to the roots and making it a lot like Prime 1 or Prime 2. Kind of like how Star Wars Force Awakens was very similar to The New Hope as a movie.
Yeah.
I don't mind them playing it safe. I absolutely don't mind that, because even then it would make a great game. But places where they could innovate, like the whole side quest shenanigan and rewards for exploring the world and getting to know more about it, I think that's something that that Metroid Prime 4 could do and would integrate seamlessly into that world.
Yeah. I see another question from DJ. This is actually an issue I wasn't aware of. Where'd it go? Did you solve the normal map issues between playing on OpenGL and DirectX? Is there are they loaded differently?
Yes. If you're using OpenGL, then you gotta flip the y-axis of the normal maps. It's a little bit different.
So wait, then that makes me wonder, because you know you have your diffuse and then you have your normal for it, which has the same name, just a different extension. But I was gonna say, even with that, like, if you just flip the axis, does it have a new file name now, or is it different?
No, it is. Because it's the way it's different is that the way the light shines. For example, think of a tile and you have cracks in the tiles. So if you use an OpenGL normal and a DirectX loadout, then you're gonna see that the cracks actually come up as opposed to go down like they should.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why I just did hand gestures for that, but it's kind of stupid that I just did it, considering I'm not on camera. But,
that's I'm kind of the same way. It's all right. I just because I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, okay, if it has to be flipped a certain way for certain video backend, but we only have one copy per texture, you know, how do we overcome that? But I kind of see what you're saying. I didn't explain my question, or I didn't ask my question well enough. But I see what you're saying. I'm glad to hear that, because now that I think about it, I do recall talking to someone, I can't remember who, about this issue. So I'm glad to see that that is something that we were able to fix.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So right now, if I'm using DirectX mode, it has to be using DirectX normals, because one thing you got to keep in mind is that the normals aren't actually injected by the Metroid Prime engine itself. It's actually injected by Dolphin Ishiruka. It's using Ishiruka as the base, and if Ishiruka is using DirectX maps, or is using the DirectX renderer, we have to continue using DirectX normals.
Okay. Well, DJ's asking if we are planning on releasing different versions. I'll start just because we kind of do. So,
well, if you're releasing it for Android, we have to make OpenGL normals.
Oh, we would?
Yeah, we will. If you're releasing it for Android, but since it's for PC and DirectX is a superior engine, rendering system, rendering API. Sorry, that's the correct term. Jesus, I'm losing my touch with tech these days. It is a much more superior rendering API than OpenGL. Not in that case, we would need to. Keep the normals as DirectX. Sorry, I just lost my chain of thought trying to fight this boss.
That's alright. As far as PC versions goes, though, I am going to basically make one that not only doesn't include normal maps or any of the light mapping, it's also just going to use regular Dolphin, just for users who want the upscaled textures, but they just don't want the extra lighting, or their computer can't handle the extra lighting. That way they get to at least partially experience this, because unfortunately, with the way it's packaged, you can't turn normal maps off. I've been experimenting with ways of doing this, but to be completely honest,
well, if you turn off Phong lighting or per pixel lighting, you can turn off normal maps entirely.
So they wouldn't be implemented at all.
Yeah, you just have to turn off per pixel lighting. That's kind of like your low settings for optimization.
Okay.
So we can have the entire package delivered, but it's just that one button that needs to be pressed.
Oh, well then we may not have to do that at all. That would be very nice. We could just include release note. Hey, if you can't handle or if your computer can't handle these maps.
Partially talking through my hat. I haven't fully tested it, but as far as I know, turning off per pixel lighting turns off any kind of advanced lighting technique in the game.
Well, we can discuss it further, but include it as part of the alpha to see, how other users' experiences with that is.
We definitely should release like a template for low, medium, and high settings.
I do see some arguing going on in the chat. Let's refrain from that. If you're being a nuisance, please just stop. I can't read what's going on here just because I am working on the project itself right now, so I can't quite mitigate the chat. But let's see here. I think we had another question. He said, DJ says that it's wrong with the axis having to be flipped. What do you mean? What do you mean by that exactly? That it's wrong? Because if I recall, there have been times where I've dumped textures because I use Direct3D 11 and DirectX, and they come out with the x-axis flipped. I believe it's the x-axis that's flipped. But then there's another time I used. It's probably OpenGL where they weren't. Or maybe, you know what, it might have been like an old version of Dolphin.
I mean, the way I figured this out was because Substance Painter actually spits out by default in DirectX normals. And the moment I export, and at my workplace where I work right now, we use OpenGL normals because we use V-Ray. And we use an OpenGL based renderer.
Isn't OpenGL kind of like the Blender of graphical APIs, where, it's more open and it's good, but it could be better?
Yes, which is why Vulkan exists. I haven't tested with how it works with Vulkan, but I'm guessing it's going to be the same as OpenGL. I'm not sure, because even Vulkan is an open standard API.
Interesting.
Vulkan is an open standard API.
And that came out kind of recently, didn't it?
Yeah, Vulkan came out like around last year.
Yeah, because I remember it was a big deal with games like Doom.
Yes, that's right. 2016, yeah. It came out around 2016.
So like 2 years ago. That's not too bad.
It got implemented into Dolphin last year as a beta, as a experimental.
Yeah. Speaking of API implementation, I'm actually really excited for, I believe it's Xena emulator, the 360 emulator.
360 emulator, that's right.
That thing like completely changed when they integrated DirectX 12. Like Halo 3, I think they could kind of get the main menu to load and like some things, and it like you couldn't really play it because there was a lot of really bad artifacting and stretching and all kinds of like horrible graphical issues. And then they integrated DirectX 12, and the game's like, "What's that? You want to play me? Yeah, you can now. Okay." It just it like behaves and works completely fine. It was like an overnight change. It was amazing.
And we kind of seen that. We're probably gonna see that soon with emulators like Yuzu, which is a Nintendo Switch emulator that's currently in development, and it's actually doing really well, despite it just running solely based off of OpenGL.
It wasn't, what's the other, there's another really popular Switch emulator. I heard about it first. It's not Yuzu. Damn it, what is it called? I think it's actually doing a little...
Ryujinx, yeah.
Maybe? It doesn't sound familiar. I remember there being before Yuzu, or maybe I just heard about it beforehand.
Yeah,
that
Ryujinx or Ryujinx, I don't know how you want to call it, but
isn't that one doing like slightly better than Yuzu? But isn't it also closed source?
No, Yuzu is doing a lot better right now. Yuzu is pretty much has Super Mario Odyssey playable at this point.
I did see that, yeah, there are, I think, at least a couple of games that are fully playable. I don't think you can do Breath of the Wild yet, but
no.
Yeah. Speaking of Breath of the Wild emulation, I was really happy that somebody actually put the effort in with Simu to get Breath of the Wild emulatable.
60 FPS.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cool little hacks on there. Actually, I still have that on my computer. And yeah, I was experimenting
there's
with
actually a modding community dedicated to Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I've seen like the videos where people do like model swaps and texture stuff. Like they do all kinds of goofy shit. That stuff's great. I love seeing that.
From GTA San Andreas or something in Zelda, and I'm like,
really?
Yeah.
There was one I saw recently that was hilarious. I was hysterical when I saw it. What was it?
Linkle? Is it the female Link one?
No, it wasn't even a Zelda character. I'm for some reason I'm thinking like King of the Hill, but I know it wasn't like Hank or Bobby. It wasn't King of the Hill. It's in that realm for some reason. I really wish I could remember. No, I can't remember what it was now. I don't know. But yeah, I've seen some great mods. I remember someone was playing as, was it Shrek? I want to say someone was playing as Shrek in the game. Yeah, but you know, this is part of why I love the emulation and modding community. There's so much shit you can do, and I really wish, you know, the big brother would, you know, chill the fuck out and let us, you know, do this stuff again, especially when we're not distributing the game. You know, something like our mod, all the content we have created ourselves. It is, yes, based off of an existing IP, but it's work we put in, and we're not making money off of it. We're not charging for it. We're not distributing the game. It's just, I don't know. I feel like so many companies, especially Nintendo, I know they're not the only one, are just so draconian about this. I mean, even recently, I'm a little fuzzy on the details. There's some sort of court case about the preservation of video games as history, where some people wanted to make it legal to archive backups of games, not to distribute them, just to archive them, and they had to fight for it because a lot of people are like, oh, it's, you know, it's unethical. You're storing games you didn't pay for it. It's like, yeah, but I mean, there aren't, for some of these games, there are no legal means of obtaining them, whether it be because of licensing reasons, or because the company went under, or because the source code is lost to time. I mean, even like, okay, I know I'm gonna rag on Nintendo a little bit here. I try not to, but there's some things they've done that they bother me and they scare me about the direction games are headed. Take for instance, I want to say it was around, was it the Wii U or the 3DS? It was found out that there was a game that was available on the eShop as a virtual console game, and when people took the actual ROM out of the packaging of the virtual console thing itself, it actually had the header of a ROM that was dumped or written for an emulator, basically indicating that they didn't compile it with source code. They used a ROM. They probably downloaded the ROM off of, a website and then redistributed it, which is extremely hypocritical. Now, let's say, okay, maybe they do have it backed up. They happened to have a ROM of their own. Fine. But my problem is, and again, especially with Nintendo and the eShop, and especially with the Switch, they're not making these games available. They're like, look at Love ROMs, the couple that ran that. They just got sued for like over $20 million.
Yeah. That is really sad.
And it bothers me because they're like, oh, Nintendo's story is, okay, this is hurting us. This is hurting our business model. We don't want to allow this. But at the same time, they're not providing it. And what blows my fucking mind about it is clearly people want this. That's why they're pirating it. People want these games, but you are not providing them. And like Rich on Review Tech USA said it very well. He's like they're living in the 80s. It's like they think you can just head down to your local Target and buy a fucking Nintendo 64 or something. Like, no. I mean, even the speedrunning community is now talking about, the legitimacy of using emulators, because they're like, oh, they're very purist, and it does make sense with emulation. You definitely run the risk of tassing and cheating and splicing, but you can't just like there's so many people that want to be part of these communities, but they can't afford to shell out the money to pay legitimately for this stuff, especially for some games where even used, it's hundreds of dollars. So,
especially if you want to buy the actual classic stuff, like
yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you want
to buy a real NES, back from 1980, whenever it was launched, that stuff's gonna cost you, because there aren't official retailers that actually sell any NESs anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if there were places, or even if even if there weren't places selling them, it's not like Nintendo's still manufacturing them. It's like, look, your stock didn't last forever. It's not like the shelves just magically fill themselves again. It's not how it works. And I
was really happy when they decided to launch.
When they what? You cut out for a second.
Sorry. I was really happy when they decided to launch the whole Super Nintendo and Nintendo Classic. Those two mini consoles.
Yeah.
Now, I know they didn't have all the games in there, but they had all the good ones, and they all ran pretty well, and they actually did quench people's satisfaction, and they could see it. They actually sold well.
They did. They sold very well.
That if they provided us a source to buy them, then we would. Like if they provided if they even created a legitimate ROM sites where you could buy the ROMs, I would buy the ROM.
Exactly. That's so many people's arguments. It's like, you don't want people stealing them, but you aren't allowing people to buy them legally. It's so backwards. It's so dumb. And the thing that really, really pisses me off about it, and I could forgive this if Nintendo 1 wasn't so tough on ROM redistribution sites. I get it's illegal, but again, they're very harsh about it. If they not only allowed a way of purchasing these games, but integrated it with their current fucking consoles, because it is possible. The Switch connects to the fucking internet. How hard would it be to host your own ROMs on the eShop for people to download, especially because they're hosting, when you download a game or buy a game from a vendor, whether it be the PlayStation Store, Xbox Marketplace, or the Nintendo eShop, you are downloading a copy of a game that they publish through a paywall from their servers. How hard would that be to do with old games? It would be insurmountably easy. I mean, even just off the top of my head, if I was to be in charge of something like this, put the virtual console on the actual, like the Switch, for example, as an API or as a front end. When you download games, they get put into there, and you just run it. It's basically a legal emulator. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. And
Absolutely. I agree.
they're showing so much resistance to this. It doesn't make sense. And you know, let's go back to the SNES and the NES Classic and potential others. It doesn't really matter. This is a hypothetical scenario. How hard would it be for them to have allowed optional internet connection to those? So it's like, oh, you want your retro games? Okay, buy this, you know, little retro console, download your retro games to it through our eShop, and there you go. Whether it's done exclusively through that, I know, and I don't understand it. But you know, I'm preaching to the choir here because so many people have said this. This is basically like a lot of what we have covered is how many people feel about this, and I'm saying a lot of stuff people have already said because it's true. And it's sad to see that, like, you know, some games potentially could die off because these companies have such an iron grip on, no, it's our money. It's one of the problems I have with how capitalism encourages greed. You know, you look at companies like Disney, for instance, okay? They own the rights to a lot of stuff that should technically be public domain. But with the way the government works and legalities work and stuff, they kind of are treated special and don't have to follow those rules. And because of that, you know, some of these things could be lost to time because you've got this company with a death grip on this, and they will drag it to the grave with them because of greed. And it's ridiculous. It's like, look, people want to be able to experience this for years to come, and they can't do that with you behaving this way. So, you know, I'll be honest, I expect us to get taken down. I expect it. I wouldn't question it. I'd be shocked.
But I think mods are okay.
Like, I don't know with Nintendo. Wasn't there? I want to say a Zelda mod, like Ocarina of Time. Wasn't there a fan remake that was similar to ours, where it runs on top of an existing game that you have to get yourself that got taken down? I mean, even that aside. Games built from the ground up with its own unique code, especially in the case of Metroid, AM2R. That got taken down. That was all, yes, it was based off of an existing IP, but everything in it was Milton Wastai's own creation. He put his own blood, sweat, and tears into it. Now, I think, if I recall correctly, some of the tiles were traced, like from Metroid Zero Mission. Some of the ruins, the Chozo ruins, I believe, are in there, but he redrew them. I could be wrong on this, don't take my word for it, but I believe he redrew them to be able to work in his game. And, you know, okay, let's say, okay, fine, he traced or copied directly one or two textures in his game. Still, most of the work was him. And the way I see it, it's like, okay, let's say I'm a corporate entity or a publisher or whatever, and I see this. Would I be comfortable with someone using property of my companies without permission? I'd probably have an issue with it. If it's something small like that, at least in my own mind right now, I could forgive it. It's like, whatever. He took a fucking image file from a game and used a couple of them in his own. You know, we're not losing billions of dollars. We're not hemorrhaging money because of this. Like, be real here. But I don't think it'd be so hard to reach out and say, hey, you know, we noticed that you did this. Please refrain in the future, and or just ask us permission if you can do this, please. I really don't think it's so hard to just reach a gentle hand out and say, could you not? You know? And even if it means, even if you do say, like, just please do not release this. Why is that so, you know? I don't know. I just feel that the way a lot of these companies handle this is extremely heavy-handed, and more so than it needs to be. Another thing I don't understand either is, like, you hear in a lot of cases, I want to say it's, well, Nintendo's kind of one of them, but I also want to say it's either Sega or Capcom or Atari. I can't remember which one. Again, I could be wrong here, but, like, people make lots of mods for some of their games, but, like, they never hire these people. They shun them and bastardize their name and treat them like they're criminals. It's like, that was talent you could have brought on to help you make games and, well, I don't know, make money. Exactly. But instead you vilify them. I don't get that.
Is Nintendo has enough money that they could have bought AM2R.
Oh yeah,
they could have bought.
They could have easily signed a contract with the creator.
Signed a contract and made it an official title.
Yeah,
it wasn't that hard. It isn't
no,
that hard.
They don't want to. They're very conservative with their property. And again, I understand wanting to protect your property. I mean, even look at us, okay? You know, I don't want us to look like hypocrites. We are packing our textures so people can't just, oh, I'm going to use that in my remake, and I'm going to use it as my own and claim it as my own, you know. But it's very disturbing, disappointing to see companies like Nintendo be as harsh as they are. You know, okay, this is how I like to put it. When it comes to piracy, when it comes to using intellectual property that is not your own, all this stuff. Okay, I'm a hacker, all right? And I completely understand that even if I wasn't a hacker, even if I was just a software developer, let's say I put something out into the world like this. Let's say from the ground up, it was my own creation, all of it. I completely understand and accept that by putting it out in the world, I risk someone data mining it, analyzing it, reverse engineering it, picking it apart to see how it works. And that's namely because I am a hacker. That's part of why I became one. I was curious as to how games work. I was curious as to how software worked. I wanted to learn how these things function. And it wasn't with malicious intent. It was genuine curiosity. But that doesn't change the fact that I have put in effort to figure these things out, even if it is not in the owner's best interest, even if they don't want me doing these things. It does not change the fact that I can and have wanted to do that. And I feel like a lot of game developers and software developers especially find out that, you know, someone either cracked their game or their software or modified it in some way, and they're like, oh my god, you know, they lose their mind. It's like, you have to understand, you risk that. There is no foolproof way of keeping, you know, your product, whatever it is, game or software, from being tampered with. You literally, there's no getting around it. You look at Denuvo. That's like a poster child of this mind frame where they're like, oh, our DRM is uncrackable, and then in like a few months it was cracked, and every time it's updated it's fucking cracked. It's like, give me a break. You can't like, you can dream, sure, but that's not reality. I feel like these companies live in a shell where, you know, their shareholders and their investors are so adamant about preserving every single penny. They're like, you need to, you know, protect this game and do all this stuff and make it, you know, hack proof, when it's like, that's not realistic. And it's just a detriment to the consumer. That's all it is. You know,
you're just giving them an inferior product, especially in terms of the way it performs and everything. Like,
yeah, the most
is noticed to have severe performance hits.
Mm-hmm. Look at what was it? Sonic. I don't play a lot of Sonic games. The collection one, the Sonic Mania, had Denuvo, and people noticed like really shitty performance with it on. But as soon as they broke it, they're like, "Holy shit, this game's like completely fine now."
Yeah,
or something like that.
That happened with a whole lot of games. That happened with Assassin's Creed.
Odyssey.
No, not Odyssey. The one that came before Odyssey. The Egyptian one. Origins.
That's escaping me. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it was escaping me too. This is because I probably didn't give a shit about the Assassin's Creed franchise for a very long time until Odyssey came out.
But yeah, no, it's just, I don't know. It's such an unrealistic mind frame to think that they can, one, preserve the integrity of their games in its entirety and make it hack proof or crack proof or whatever the hell it is that they're running through their minds, and just for the sake of what? Saving how much do they lose, you know, annually on pirating? Like, I know all these companies run statistics on that, and I know it's not actually hurting them. Now, I don't 100% agree with piracy. I admit I've done it before. You know, when I was younger and I first discovered emulators, I didn't even question the legality of it. I was just, oh my god, what? I can just download a game and play it? What? It blew my fucking mind. So I went to town with that stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, look at the way the music industry handled it. Okay, like when the internet first came out, if you were caught pirating, holy shit, you better pray you better pray you can like hide, because there were some pretty harsh punishments for that shit back in the day. Like, it wasn't just a matter of, you know, making an example out of Sally so and so who, you know, stole a couple of albums. Like, it was kind of a big deal, but they relaxed on it. I think they had I mean, obviously they still don't like it, you know, piracy is piracy, it is theft, but they understand that, like, they can't stop it, especially with audio. How do you append a license key to an audio file, especially with all of the different peripherals that can run it? It's fucking impossible. You're gonna put more effort into protecting the music than you are producing it. It's stupid, and they know that. That's why they didn't do that. And then, you know, you have the fact that they know by pirating shit, certain people that don't have normal means of access to it are gonna get it. It's going to get the word out. Now, does that mean that, oh my God, you know, I live where there's no internet and my friend showed me some music and gave me some, you know, illegal copies, I must go out and buy every single copy? No, not every person's going to treat it that way. Some people are going to be like, oh, I could just get it for free, and they're just going to, you know, keep doing that. But other people like me who have discovered certain artists, it's like, you know, I like this stuff. I want to support this and, you know, see it continue to grow and flourish. So in a way, take this with a grain of salt. Piracy is good for just about any market. And even if it wasn't, it is an integral part of any market ecosystem throughout human history. Anytime we've had, you know, the Silk Road or whatever, there are always people getting goods or products through illegitimate means. That's just kind of human nature, really. It's I don't want to say it's inescapable, but it's part of our society. It's just part of how it works.
That's right. I agree with you, and I think the only thing that people need, that the developers, or rather the publishers, I should say, need to figure out is what's worth spending money more on. Is it easier for us to incorporate ways to foil piracy, or is it easier for us to incorporate ways to actually provide a service for older titles and stuff like that? And I think the latter, I think they themselves know that the latter is a much more viable option, because not only that, not only is spending money on that going to provide more benefits later on, but their revenue stream is still going to grow regardless of how you look at it.
Yeah.
They're still making money by reselling those games to you. And I don't mind them if they're reselling it. If you want to sell me Metroid Prime Trilogy again, fine, I'll buy it. You know? But give me the option to buy it. Don't just say I cannot buy it. And
yeah, at least give people the option, and don't, you know, again, vilify them for, it's like, okay, fine, you're not going to provide it for me, I'm going to pirate it. And be like, no, you can't do that either. You know, you put people in a corner when you do that shit. Yeah. So you're asking for it, frankly. I'm just going to say it. You're asking for people to pirate shit when you do not provide them with easy or legal means of obtaining these goods. It's not rocket science. The writing is on the wall. Everybody knows this shit. Again, kind of like earlier, I'm just repeating stuff that people already know.
Right.
So
yeah, it's just backwards, man.
It is.
That's all. From what I can tell, that's the only thing that's is that, and I think that's probably gonna change with the more younger generation of people coming in, because a lot of the investor shareholders, they're all what, 40, 50, 60, 70.
These are all older people. Their only concern is their bottom dollar. It's really what that's literally what their job is making money. So I mean, I won't agree with their behavior, but it makes sense.
Don't really understand, or don't fully understand how the digital age kind of works. Now, I'm not saying that, oh, I understand 100% more than them. No. All I'm saying is that they grew up in a different generation. They grew up...
There is a disconnect.
Yeah, there's a disconnect where they think that the physical product is the same as a digital product, and that's just not the case.
No. Look at how Nintendo handles their digital return policy. They don't have one.
They don't.
You know, like
exactly.
I just watched a video on Review Tech USA where he was talking about how Europe is going to take him to court. They're like, so yeah, what you're doing is illegal because it's anti-consumer, which isn't a lie. It is. You know, and again, I understand Nintendo because like I could, well, I can't do it anymore because the free shop's down. But like it was easy. Well, yeah, okay, I download a copy of the game, back it up, get, you know, in a hypothetical scenario, I'd get my refund, and all right, well, I still got my backup. But again, you cannot stop piracy. You can't. Like I so badly just want to like slam my fist on a desk. Like you cannot do it. I'm sorry. Like it's not a bad goal to try to achieve. It is technically stopping a crime, but it's just going to happen. And you literally, again, like what I was saying earlier, if you put something out there, you have to be okay with people tampering with it and fondling it and doing God knows what with it. That's just going to happen. And I feel like people can't live with that. And I'm not saying it's easy. You know, like me putting this mod out there, I don't really want people figuring out all the little secrets and tricks that, you know, I've done for this mod. I mean, I've put hours and hours and hours into orchestrating all of this. I don't want somebody to just go in and be like, oh, okay, this is how I did it. I'm going to go make my own thing now. But you know what? If someone does, whatever, you know, it sucks and it's shitty, but what am I going to do, really? Even if I was a big corporation and I had lawyers up the ass, what am I going to do? You know, even if I stop one person, I'm not going to go after every single person that I'm like, oh, I think you've been tampering with this. We're going to take you to court for thousands of dollars, waste all of these people's time just because I thought you were doing something. Oh, another one. That's more money and time wasted. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. And like you were saying, with, you know, all of these investors and stuff, not all of them. I know I said all of them, but with investors and shareholders, like a lot of them are older and their mind frame just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't fit in. There's a lot of there are a lot of gray zones with the digital millennium, and a lot of it has to do with the age gap between people in power and people in our generations where we're younger and we're more integrated with this stuff. They don't understand. You know, anytime I hear about, you know, a politician or someone that's like 80 fucking years old making decisions on how the internet should work, I laugh. And okay, yeah, sure, some of them out there might be really proficient with the internet. I know a lot of them aren't. I know a lot of them are like, oh, you know, you've got your Twitter and the Facebook and this and that, and it's just like I remember the time the news was talking about 4chan being a hacker, and they're like, how do we stop this 4chan? It's like 4chan's not a person. It's you know, they don't get it.
Yeah, they don't get
and
it.
It's not, right. And it's not bad that they don't. It's just it shouldn't be in their hands to make decisions about shit they do not understand. You know, I will never say it's wrong to not know something ever. No one is born with the knowledge of the world. No one. But to treat people like, you know, they should, or to give people responsibility in a realm which they have no grasp is a little bit irresponsible. And, you know, I'm sure you can tell in the tone of my voice, that is a severe understatement. Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't get it. A lot of stuff has to change. I was actually just watching a video where someone was saying, he's like, you know, I was talking about how the big gaming crash is on its way, and then he realized, he's like, no, it's here. It's here. It's happening right now. It's like, oh my god, it is.
That was the Quarterings video? Yeah.
The quarter, yeah. Yeah, that popped up in my my feed, and I was watching that, and I was like, holy shit, he's actually right. You look around, and
right. The thing is, I'd say it's kind of like a divide. I think the ones that are actually gonna survive and make it through are the companies and the studios that are tied to the systems, like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft-based studios that are gonna probably be fine. But others, such as EA and
Ubisoft's gotten a little bit better, but then there's
Ubisoft still makes really nice games. I like their games.
2K is kind of getting in some deep shit.
Yeah, 2K is getting into deep stuff. EA is completely down.
Oh god,
they're completely down the hole. I mean, Bethesda after Fallout 76.
Oof. Yeah.
And here's the thing: people are out, you know, swinging around Todd Howard's name on all this. You know, I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm thinking Todd Howard might barely even have any hand in all of this.
He's just a face. He's PR.
He's just a face.
I would never.
PR. Pete Hines is just PR.
he goes to these conference calls, and the investor's like, all right, this is our product. Is this what we have? Yes. Have you met this goal? Yes. Have you met this goal? Yes. Okay. This is how much money we want to make. Get your ass out on that stage and sell our fucking product, or it's a fire under your ass. That's his job. That's why I never wanted to get into marketing. Good Lord, having to deal with people being like, you better make me money or you're going to lose your job and it's going to ruin your life and all this other shit. Like, fuck that. Fuck that. I give people like Todd Howard. I almost said Todd Coward because someone was spamming that the other day. But I give people like him props for putting up with that shit. Like it's stressful.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people are calling him a liar and this and that. And even if he knew, okay, let's say Todd Howard is a liar and he knew that this thing was a dumpster fire. Do you really think he's going to risk his probably a job that probably pays really well to go up and say,
exactly.
Sorry guys, don't buy this game. It's a piece of shit. He'd be fired before he left the stage. He has no choice. Don't shoot the messenger.
The product, absolutely, and the same can be said for either Pete Hines too, who is another marketing department guy. Like,
or even Reggie Fils-Aimé. I've seen people giving him shit. Like I was teasing at it. I called him a tease at the VGA. I was like, that fucker. But like I know he's not the one being like, okay, I'm in charge of Metroid Prime 4 and distribute. I mean, yes, he's in charge of a lot of shit, but he's not ultimately the one calling all of the shots. He has rules he has to follow. That's just how it is, and people have to deal with it. And I see all these hateful people like, oh, that piece of shit, he's such a liar, and oh, he hyped this up. It's like, no, like, okay, fine, yeah, he wore a couple of shirts, but like, I don't know. I think it's a little ridiculous to be pissed at him, like genuinely pissed at him for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's fair at all to be pissed at Todd Howard or even Reggie. Reggie, not at all. I mean, he didn't even say that, oh, Metroid Prime 4 is going to be there or something.
Yeah, he didn't guarantee shit.
Like, I can see why people are mad at Todd Howard, but it's just not his fault. It's not. It's nowhere his fault. He was told to do something, and that's just the bottom line of it. And he had to do it because the studio that he works at, which is the Bethesda Game Studios, BGS, which is a great studio. Like, they make quality games. Like, they have all that potential going on.
Right.
But it's just that he's mixed up in this corporate bullshit, which really... Whereas I just think that Fallout 76 is not a game that Todd Howard made, but it's a game that the investors or the publishers made.
Yeah. Well, and that's another problem I have with a lot of animosity towards developers. We're like, oh, these assholes made a shitty game and this, and yes, they made it, sure, but they ultimately, at the end of the day, especially with how games are going now, with all these big conglomerates buying up all these studios and developers, they answer to those publishers, higher ups, the investors, the executives, the CEOs, all that shit. They're more or less, the way I see it now, slaves. Part of why, because I so badly wanted to do video game development when I was in high school. That was my dream. I wanted to make video games.
Oh, me.
But that was around the time things started going to shit, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be told, like, oh, well, you can't do that. That's not really going to make us money. Or you can't do that. That doesn't please our investors. You got to please the investors. Like, no, fuck off. I just want to make a game. I feel really bad for a lot of game developers because they have to make these shit games just to ensure some greedy asshole's bottom dollar. And I'm not saying investors don't deserve the right to make money. And I'm not even saying that they're a complete detriment to the industry. I just think it's too much about money. Too much. These people are making more money than they could ever spend in their entire goddamn life, but it's still not enough. It's still not enough, and that's what bothers me about it. That's what stives me about it.
They cannot seem to find a plateau. Like, the movies industries have pretty much reached a plateau where you have these big budget releases, and they've sort of curated themselves based on their budget really well, and that's something which the gaming industry has not been able to do, because they see it as, oh, gaming is recurrent monetization or something like that. And when you see it as that, when you see a video game as being, oh, this can gain me money, this is for perpetually, that's when shit hits the fan. That's when people get it wrong, and that's when developers in general lose out. And then developers are blamed by the publishers to say, oh, you did not make great game. I'm like, oh, well, you gave me a shitty timeline. You didn't give me the proper funding. You didn't give me the programmers I wanted.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think about it a lot, like in my industry, okay, because I do construction and contracting. Like just recently, my boss was talking to the client. I want to say this was like last week, and he's like, you know, okay, this is about how much work we've got done. I've got a crew of this many people. This is what we can knock out in about 2 weeks. We could turn over your IDFs and your MDF, and you'll have access to your data center. And they're like, okay. Well, they come back like 3 days later, so like you're gonna be done in 4 days, right? And my boss is like, excuse me? Well, we really need this done. He's like, I'm aware, but I told you what was reasonable, and now it's not. Like, excuse me, what the fuck? Because he's right. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And like literally all the other trades were looking around laughing their asses off. They're like, they really think this is going to be done? Like, okay, fine. I guess they can say get out in 4 days, but they're going to be missing furniture, data, electric. Like, all right, fuck you. I guess you want it now. There's a really big problem, not just in the video game industry, with a lot of people wanting their instant gratification. It's really disproportionate now. It's really disproportionate. I will say, though, in the case of some developers, I do not like when some of them sell out. I'm going to say it. Some people may hate me for it, but Bungie sold out. And I don't think they had to really think really hard when they signed that contract with Activision that they were selling their soul to the devil. It's not like, you know, Activision had a stellar reputation before this. They fucking knew. And I'm not saying they didn't do it for good reasons. You know, these are human beings. They have families that they have to, you know, sustain and provide for. And that's fine. I'm never going to tell you, oh, well, you know, I want a better video game. Fuck your family. Like that, no. But I don't like the lies. I don't like the deception. And there are some cases where the developer has their hand too. At least in Bungie's case with Destiny, both parties play a hand. Definitely. I neither of them are completely faultless. And it's really sad to see when a developer with so much potential does that. And, you know, they've sold their soul to the devil. Like, okay, yes, Bungie made the choice to sell out, but Activision now is calling the shots. Activision has them on a leash. And now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Do we give up and go out of business because we don't want to follow Activision's rules? Or do we keep doing schemy, manipulative shit to continue our jobs, to continue our, you know, supporting our families and stuff? And even then, exactly. It's ultimately with the developers up to the people making those decisions, not the people at the keyboards developing. It's ultimately that decision was handled by whoever owns the company or whatever. So even then, it's not the entire developer's fault. I'm sure there are some people developing Destiny that are like, fuck this. Why am I doing this? You know, they don't want to.
Exactly. So. Yeah, I can totally see that happening, and you raised a very good point. In fact, the whole backlash against the video game crunch that's been going on, and I mean, as a consumer, I'm like, hey, look, you gotta make sure that the employees are paid first. I don't care whether if you're gonna delay a game, delay it, because I know that eventually the delayed game will be good. But if you're trying to rush a game out the door, and you're gonna crunch your employees and make them work 100 hours a week, I cannot find that acceptable. Like, I just feel really bad for those employees that put in those so many extra hours, and a lot of them get paid on this monthly salary, so it's quite likely that they may not get compensated on those extra hours. And that's where the problem lies. Like, where do you draw the line? Because first, you're not paying them enough, and two, it's just these executives and the shareholders that are making all the money. The average employee, the average artist or the 3D modeler that works at a studio, their average pay is what, 60K?
Something in the neighborhood.
Yeah, 60K. You know, I mean, if you're starting out, it's even way lower. It's around 35 to 40K if you're just starting out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
like minimum wage in some places.
Yeah, that is terrible.
Yeah, it's really disheartening, you know. And you, you look at situations like that, and even situations like mine. Okay, now I have literally had 1 day off in like a month and a half. Now I will say I'm not being forced to do that. I am choosing to do that.
Right.
But part of why I am is because I'm a team player, and the sad thing about the situation with the job I'm at is, again, the client has unrealistic goals. We need to get the job done, but we're not being allotted the time that we need, and all the people in the higher ups are the ones being like, well, we need it done now, and being just unrealistic and disconnected. And at the end of the day, the people doing the grunt work are the ones paying the hardest. Like literally last night, I should say this morning, we had one of our inspections at like 4 a.m. My boss and a couple of his guys literally worked until 4 a.m. They worked over like 17 hours just to make sure that we could pass our inspection, because they had to. If they didn't, we would literally have to have failed and possibly risked losing this client. Now, the company wouldn't have gone under, but it would hurt. It would hurt people, and it would cost money, and do all this stuff. It's just it's ridiculous. And we've gotten really deep into it now. I apologize. I have a tendency of like doing this where we get distracted and stuff like that. But this is why I do some of the things I do. I like helping people. I like helping communities, and I don't think I should be demonized for reaching my hand out and working on projects like this. I don't care what Nintendo thinks. I'm gonna say it. Even if they send me directly a DMCA, you and everyone else, it's like whatever. Fuck you. But I'm not doing it because I'm against them. I admit I've talked a lot of shit about them, but I really just wish that we could work together. And even if we weren't working for them directly, like it's like, okay, we're not making money off your stuff. We're not running your name through the mud for one thing. We're not making a really like fucked up Metroid mod. So just leave us alone. They haven't said anything yet, but again, I keep saying that. I know that they will eventually. I know they will. If they don't, I would be completely dumbfounded. I don't know what I would do if I found out Nintendo didn't even know about this project, or even better, they just didn't care. That would be. That'd be great. I'd be pleasantly surprised.
So far, they don't care about the Zelda mods that are out there. They're doing.
Oh, the what?
The Zelda mods.
Really?
Yeah, they're perfect. They seem to be perfect. They've existed from the beginning since last year. And so far so good, I'd say. So far, I'm like, you know what? If they don't give a shit about Zelda, I doubt they're Metroid.
Well, I might agree with you if it wasn't for the fact that there have been rumblings of a Metroid Prime HD
remaster, yeah.
Because okay, let's think about AM2R. I genuinely think the biggest reason why it was taken down is Samus Returns was in the work. Because Samus Returns, AM2R was in the works for 6 or 7 years, a long time. And let's take the last year of development, right before it came out. That Samus Returns, even with Nintendo and all their money and all their resources, they didn't crank that game out in a year. They were probably working on that game for the same amount of time, if not longer. I would not be surprised if it was longer. So it makes sense that they took it down. I don't agree with it. I'm not happy with it, but it makes sense. My roommate made a really good phrase. He pointed out something really good. He's like, a lot of people get really mad at just hearing the truth. You tell them the sky is blue and they scream at you, and it's like, you can be as mad as you want, but the sky is still fucking blue. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. All I did was point it out, and you're furious, so I can't help you. Sorry.
This is what I like about games like Metroid. They really have this attention to detail. This god rays, just kind of fake god rays, albeit, but I
right.
Like
but they still tried.
Yeah, they still tried, but I really like that. They tried to make the whole thing, the whole scenario of getting the space jump boots seem very epic. They're really nice, given the hardware limitations of that point.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I love about some of the older games. I honestly feel that a lot of our advancements in technology have almost encouraged laziness or have encouraged a lack of innovation.
Yeah.
And I only say that because back in the day, you had to innovate. If you didn't, you were going to have a lackluster game. Maybe, maybe you got lucky. Maybe you hit a certain click that, people really, really love. And, okay, yeah, you didn't put the most effort into it, or you didn't innovate the most, but you made a good game. But yeah, no, developers had to like bust their asses back in the day to pull off some of the stuff they could do. I think about it anytime I see games like Metroid Prime, where even with
you can tell that in the quality of the games. I mean, even if you look at not just Metroid Prime, but you had so many good games, like the first God of War and the PlayStation 2, and
the first Halo.
The first Halo. The Combat Evolved was so good. Ratchet and Clank.
Yep.
Jak and Daxter, those platformers, the Sly Cooper games. I really like the Sly Cooper games.
Yeah, like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, all of those games. Even speaking of God Rays and Crash Bandicoot, I think it's the second one. I really need to play those games. I didn't really play them, but I want to say it was Game Hut. It's a YouTube channel where it's like an excerpt. Maybe he's current, I'm not sure, but he's a developer where he talks about like the secrets of game design and stuff. And I believe it was him. And there's one area where they have this stained glass where there's like God rays coming through, and he talks about how he's like, this is not actually like real time lighting. This is a deception. It gives us the look we're looking for, but like we had to really innovate to get this look. It took a genuine amount of effort to achieve this. It was worth it. We're happy with it. We don't regret it. But we had to flex our muscles to pull this off, and I love hearing developers talk about that stuff. I mean, I was even thinking about it the other day when I was wrapping up the last few lines of code needed for the launcher for this, and I was like, I've put so much time into this. I've lost sleep to this. I've even gotten a couple of headaches and some frustration getting this to work, and at the end of the day, I was so happy, especially yesterday when I published the test launch, the one you're running now, and I got everything working. I was just so happy. I felt so gratified that all of it paid off. And not just for myself, because I mean, obviously I'm going to use this mod for myself. Yeah, that right there, that's what I was talking about earlier. If you look up and down too quick. But the community, like I know so many people are going to be happy about this. Holy shit! A first-person shooter, Metroid Prime, that's HD 2. What? Excuse me? And I don't. We haven't seen a whole lot of chatter from the community. I think a lot of them are a little reserved, which is fine. I'm not against that. I'm not saying like, oh, you better open your damn mouth. But I know people are excited for it, and that makes me happy to know that. And I'm not getting paid for this. I'm putting all this effort into it, but I am happy knowing that people are going to enjoy this. So even if we get taken down, I have no regrets. I have absolutely no regrets in this.
Hey, like we managed to get our names out there too, and we put our dedication into it. It was worth it. I've had my fun doing it.
Yeah, and I've loved working with this team.
Even though things are tedious, like the whole arm cannon thing that I was telling you, like de-triangulating every single polygon and then fixing all the vertices together. There was something about it that helped me kept going. And I very rarely find that passion. So, which is why this is actually a really good lighting scenario where you can actually see the soft edges on the model.
Yeah, I love seeing that.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, because I saw your post on that. It was beautiful, by the way. Why is it that is like the one thing in this game you can do that with? I am curious because you didn't modify the ISO directly, right?
No, I did not modify the ISO, and it's actually. You want to know something? It's a normal map.
Literally, that's it?
Yeah, this is just a normal map. It's the same model. It's the identical model, and it's just a normal map.
That's insane. I mean, I know you can get you can pull off some pretty dramatic shape changes with normal, but that is nuts looking at the arm cannon, especially that side by side you had. I looked at it, I'm like, did he patch his game? I was really, because I knew you didn't, but I was so curious. I'm like, it's so round now. Like, how the fuck did he do that? But yeah, it's really impressive. I really like it, and I will say, I do like the.
work if you're like really close, like there. If there's no lighting, it kind of breaks down. But everywhere,
overall,
everywhere there is.
Yeah.
Where, you know, even if it's backlighting, as long as there's something shining on, there you go. You can see it. You can see.
Yeah.
So, what I did was, I ripped the model out from using Heckle. Ripped the model out using Heckle, which was thanks to Antidote and Antidote and Jacqueline. They did a really good job with that tool. It is so useful.
Yeah, we should. We really need to like kind of talk about them more. I feel like we've really undersold them here. You know, it's not that we don't appreciate it. It's just that's been more of like a.
It's
I don't want to say a back burner, but like a background thing.
It's always been in the shadows. Of something, but that's actually the reason why we have gotten to this point where we are, especially with the whole light maps thing going on. It definitely that wouldn't exist.
Massive shout out to Antidote and his team. They have been busting their ass with Erde and Heckle and all of this stuff. I remember when I first found out about Erde, what it was. I literally like had to read that again. I was like, "What? You did what with Metroid Prime?"
Yeah,
excuse me.
Exactly. I was absolutely astonished by what they managed to achieve with but especially something using Blender. I mean, imagine that.
Oh, I know. But I think it's like the perfect marriage, just because, well, for one thing, Blender is open source, but it's also very accessible. You know, it gives a lot of people the opportunity to pick the brains of this game, which I think is great. I love educating people on how things work, whether it be a game or software, whatever. You know, I mean, I'm sure you've probably heard it in the way I talk about certain things, but when somebody makes something like that and provides that opportunity that would not have been there otherwise, because let's face it, it wouldn't have been. I'm sure people have made attempts, but it's a big undertaking and they've stuck to it. I still see updates, you know, and it's just phenomenal to see someone putting in as much effort as they are, and to see a project like this succeeding. You know, I think Erde is a little more underground. Like, I still see people saying like, "Wait, Erde? What is that? What are you talking about?" You know, and I link them. I tell them, I'm like, "Yeah, you know, this is what it is." But I really think it's undersold. I mean, even Prime Hack. I gotta be honest. When I made the Prime Hack integration announcement, I kind of thought more people would know what it would be, and I thought it would have been received a little. I don't want to say better, but like, yeah, it would have got more attention. But it didn't. I don't think anybody like knew what the hell it was.
I really think it's also why we need to sort of get the attention of a lot of So I'm thinking of contacting one Metroid database is definitely one of them. And I know there are a few other channels whose main creator or content creator is huge Metroid fan. Spawnwave channel, Spawnwave News being one of them. In fact, exclusive. He even had an whole exclusive piece as to why Metroid Prime wasn't at the Game Awards. And
really, yes. I think I've watched some of his content before, but I'm not 100% familiar with him. You'll have to link me some of his info so I can check it out. But yeah, no, you're right, and that's part of why. And it's ironic because I said I didn't want to do like marketing or PR, but it's part of why I've reached out to people like the Orpheon. I was like, hey, you do a lot of Metroid stuff.
Exactly.
Do you know about this project?
Orpheon's a great start. Like, Orpheon's definitely a great start to get some mainstream attention. And maybe that mainstream attention might actually help us further in acquiring more talent to help us out with stuff.
Right.
Because this, I'm gonna put it out there. Like right now, yeah, it doesn't seem a lot open source, but eventually, heck, we definitely want more people on this. Like, we got like 3 games to chug through, or 2 if you want to say the 2 best ones. But there's still, and considering how much of stuff that there is in each, we definitely use more people. know a few personal friends of mine that are huge fans of the Metroid franchise, and one of them has just recently joined the team, Sardines in Outer Space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's also a really good texture artist. We went to college together. But it's almost... I really want to see this happen.
Yeah, I do too.
Where there are more people, where it sort of gets the whole mainstream attention, kind of like Skyrim mods does. Skyrim mods gets a lot of attention. Like, everybody knows that Skyrim is a game that you can mod, but when you say, oh...
Skyrim, I'll put it this way, Skyrim is still relevant, and a big part of that is mods.
Mods, yeah. It's the only reason, I'd say, is mods.
Well, and Todd Howard keeps trying to sell it to everyone.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about the Eternal Todd meme?
Eternal Todd?
So someone DM'd me, it was a shit post, but they DM'd me, it looked like a Magic the Gathering card, and it was Todd Howard on the front, and he had like the glowing red meme eyes, and it said, Eternal Todd, he seeks out people on every corner, or through the corners of the earth that haven't bought Skyrim yet. And I was like, yep, that's pretty accurate.
Totally killing it. Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, Skyrim was like a phenomenon. I think it's getting really late.
Oh god, yeah, it is. We got really tied into this, but I mean, it's fine. I don't mind. I know I said I had to go to bed, but I tell myself that like almost every night.
Do we have any other important questions? Last minute Q&As from anyone?
Yeah, we still got 6 viewers.
Still got 6 viewers. If any of you guys want to pitch in a question or something that you have for the team, or just about MPR in general, feel free to ask us.
Yeah.
Because I think.
Yeah, I saw that. I think that's when we got all into the politics and legalities of modding.
But this was a fun conversation. Like, SB and I had a similar thing, but conversation going on except in chat, and we were like, oh, but we gotta totally make a live stream out of this. And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Except had it not been for the debacle that the things happened, where a lot of
I did
start to the live stream, I'd say.
Right. I mean, like you said, shit's going to happen. But yeah, I gotta say, I enjoyed it. I've literally never done a live stream before, ever, conversation or otherwise. But it was an interesting experience, and I enjoyed it. Again, yeah, we had our issues, but it could have been a lot worse. Well, I mean, I did have the connection issues. That was really irritating, but whatever. We still had good conversation. I still, in regard to questions, I still think we have covered just about everything we needed to, at least on our end. Like, obviously we don't know everyone's questions, but as far as discussing what's going on with the project, why, who, when, where, why, how, all that stuff, I think we've covered just about everything, which I'm happy with. I really wanted to do that. Thanks for that, Eddie. Eddie says, got nothing to say, but incredible job from the MPR team.
Oh, thank you very much, Eddie. Much appreciated. So
yeah, it's been a lot of work.
Yeah, we've been sort of chugging along, and we still need to streamline the way we do things, because we were a bit all over the place. But it was kind of that stage where we were still experimenting, and I'm glad that Jason actually came up with the idea to, what, let's just dish out the orphan.
Yeah, that's probably the smoothest way to introduce it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's kind of just get a general idea of how the engine works and how Dolphin works and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and I mean, really, like, trying to do basically what we did with the Orpheon, where it's like partially remastered with the entire game. Who knows how long it would have taken to put this out? I mean, I'm all for taking time in a quality project, but there are limits. It's like, oh, hey, remember that project we started like 6 years ago? We're finally releasing our first alpha. Not the best way to encourage your audience to stay engaged. So I'm sure there would be some people that would hold out, but just not the best direction to go.
Yeah, I'll definitely probably reach out to Metroid Database with like maybe a Discord link and a couple screenshots here and there, because I know they're pretty active on Instagram. And yeah, that's about it. I'm glad we covered a lot of topics and a whole lot of ground in terms of the whole MPR. As mentioned before, we are scheduled for a release date 28.
Yep, that is correct. If not earlier, maybe like a day early or so. If if you guys want to know about that, you know, I'm sure I'd love to see here. I'm pretty sure Jason put a link. Yep, hey, we've got our community. Hey, you know, swing by the Discord. Just go ahead and join. Literally, all you have to do is go to the MPR tester application channel and just say, hey, I want to test. You'll be given a role. Anyone can join. You know, initially we were going to limit this to certain users, but we have decided, you know, fuck it, make it open for everyone. So just say, hey, I want to test. You can go ahead and test. We'll hook you up. You'll receive updates. We're doing a lot of updates now, especially because we are nearing the release of this alpha. Things may slow down a little bit after, just because we're going to shift focus and we're going to, you know, have to get back to working on other things. But in the meantime, yeah, you're going to get lots of updates. We're very actively communicating with the community right now. And we also answer questions on the server itself. We don't have to just do these Q&A sessions. And I was going to say, like, I also feel a lot better now just because you've actually, you know, shown people the mod in action. That was one thing I was really pushing for, because I know some of you guys in the community were a little weirded out, especially when I came in. They're like, who the hell's this guy? Why are they doing this the way they are? And I was okay with it. You know, I admit it was a little weird, but I hope you guys, you know, now that you've seen it, you understand a little bit better what we're doing. And you actually got to see it in action. It's kind of been nothing but screenshots and hearsay. So hopefully that makes you guys feel a little bit better. Again, Discord link in the description below. Go ahead and follow us, and we'll probably just see you guys around until the next, until the alpha release and the next video upload.
All right, see you around, folks, and have a good night. Thank you for watching.